What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Muscle, and this is another Two Line Music Hut's Entertainment Report podcast. And today we have a really special guest in the building. Listen, he's been giving you hits from in the late 90s right until now. He's one of dancehall's most recognizable faces. You know who we have in the building today? We have Mr. Vegas in the building, aka King Subi in the building. What's going on, big boss?
Heal, brother. Big up yourself. I'm a great fan of your work.
That makes two of us. Thank you so very much.
Yes, I.
All right. When you come to this program here, we like to take it right back and then go right into 2021. Is that cool with you?
Yes, I. Let's do it.
All right. Let's do it 100%. All right. First question we always start with, where did you grow up in Jamaica and what actually attracted you to music in the first place?
Well, I was born in Kingston and left Kingston at a tender age. To the hills of St. Andrew. That is like, up Lawrence Tavern side, up that way, up St. Andrew. So I grew up very poor, and basically, so I'm always like, I was always dreaming of, a way to get out of poverty. The board house and no television, and my mother had just a little radio as any means of entertainment or media. So at a tender age, I was always thinking of how could I get a television and a better life based on the life that I knew. So I remember living with my brothers and sisters by my mother's side, but not my father's side. And because of the abuse from my brothers, especially my brothers, I started running away from home at a tender age. So when I ran away, I would, tell people that, I'm here. I came to meet my mom at the bus stop, but she didn't come on the bus. And they would buy the lie. So then, they would put me up for the night. And I use that story all the time to sleep from different, just from the house to house.
And what age are we talking about here?
Well, I was in grade 1, so this must have been like 7 years old, around there. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the exact age, but I was in grade 1 at that time, going on to grade 2, and it was then that I started, listening to music from a sound system that used to play at a place called Fern Hill, at the end of the at the foot of the hill from where I go to where I went to school, Unity Primary. There was a sound system that played at the end of the road, or the end of the hill, the bottom of the hill. My bad. So when I was there, run away from home, and I was basically listening to the music and the sound system. That is how now I started getting, attached to the music. So I remember these, and later on I realized that the vocals that the sound that I really, really, grew accustomed to and became a fan of, was like the sound of Barrington Levy and Tenor Saw, And those unique voices, they attracted. I was attached to those voices. They were like inspirations without me even knowing who the artists were. It's later on I realized that these artists were like Chuck Turner, and Barrington Levy and Tenor Saw, and Pinchers. So those vocals, Pinchers came, years after, when I started going to Oberlin, but it was the same vibe, just listening to these sounds on the sound system at Fernhill.
And did you discover your voice at this time here yet, or just the influence of music is in your mind at this time?
Just the influence of music. I didn't know I could sing then. I loved music. But I later discovered this at Oberlin. When I started going to Oberlin High School, I used to go to school as a barefoot youth, no shoes. And I had a big scar in my face. Yeah, when I was going to Albany Lawlage, a youth basically was I think he was beating up one of my brethren. And I was like, yo, load the man. You know, I used to walk with go home at evening time. And then basically just look around and just swing the knife and just cut me across my face. So I had a big scar in my face, like a big, like about like this, because my mom didn't take me to the doctor to get it stitched. So because of that, it keloid. So I went through my whole adolescent years with a big scar into my 20s, and my late 20s. So when I was at Oberlin, because of the scar in my face and no shoes and stuff like that, and teenage bumps and all of them things there, I had nothing to attract the females. Mm-hmm. I was basically like the ugly boy. Then when I reached 9th grade, I just left 8th grade and I reached 9th grade. I started hanging out with some youth in my class named Romy and Clayton and them youth. Then Romy's a man now start in DJ. So because Romy a DJ now, I try fit in. Okay. Because Romy, the girls them love Romy. Zane, which is Alex. So Romy and Clayton was a youth and we used to party with them time there in Oberlin. And I just started 9th grade. And we took it to the auditorium around the canteen area during the breaks time, the lunchtime. So it's there, so now people beat the desk. And Romy a DJ and I jump in. You see?
As a singer or as a DJ?
Yeah, man, I sing, man. And then I sing now like Sanchez sound. So I was like, never seen you looking so lovely as you've been tonight. Never seen you shine so bright. So amazing. And I beat the desk. Never seen no many men like see if you wanted to dance. Give her a little romance. And the girls them start going away. So yeah. So it's there. So now I really, really realize that, whoa, them like come sing. So when I was going home from school now, I started singing for the girls that I walk with, because we used to walk from Oberlin, go to my house in Pigeon Valley. So you had some girls like Zoe and them girls, and she just passed away the other day, Zoe. This was like the first girl me ever have a crush on when I really sing to. Mm-hmm. So I sing to her even time I go home, I try to get her attention, And she really blush. I say, if we could start anew, I wouldn't hesitate. So and she just a blush. You see? So when we see how the girls are react now, when I go my even time and I beg me for sing. Yeah, so I use name Zul Palmer now from around my way, hear about me and this singing thing and say my camera go studio.
Okay, so at this time here, were you looking to pursue music, or basically this is now your intro into music with getting into the studio here?
This is the intro basically. Mm-hmm. But the influence started with like Pinchers and Sanchez. Mm-hmm. The influence to be an artist, because prior to that, remember, I was just like attracted to the sounds of these unique sounds. Mm-hmm. From like, I realized later on that they were like sounds from Barrington Levy. These were sounds from Barrington Levy and Tennessee. But it was just something about the sounds that, Chuck Turner, I got to leave in. And this youth from down at Seaview, True Love Will Never Die, Conrad Crystal. Right. And Chuck Turner had a song called I Can Take a Woman, Leave Her Alone. A temporary lover, come and go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So before we get to a music mountain with the producer where I'm here about me, just to piggyback a little bit, the real vibe start now. The real aspiration started now at a sound clash one night Or at the same place where I used to run where I stand up when the music I play at night time when the sound I play. Right? So this sound system I play and you have a sound clash I go on. And you have a DJ up on my way, you know, named Wingy. No, named Winty, sorry. Winty was the bad DJ. Him around the place. The man we used to talk about Winty like he might be like a Stitchy them and like the man is a little young youth and bad. You know, the baddest DJ. I'm surprised how him never really pursue music. Right? So them have a clash the night. And him a kill everything. And I say, I want to go in at the clash. And him say, no, Miss Lucille boy that. So we going at the clash. I'm seeing, we going at the clash and me have a tune my right off a Stitchy. The time Stitchy have a tune name young girl wear your size, young girl wear your size. So me have a tune I say, young girl look your size, young girl look your size. Seeing so I jump in at the clash and me have a next song now of Admiral Bailey song with me Risco Benji, I think it was Risco Benji melody or Bailey melody. Where me I say now let me country, now let me country, now let me country, now let me country. In the country where we born and grow, in the country where we born and grow, we have sweet potato, yam and tomato, plantain and chocho, for mango, dasheen and cocoa. Yes, what I say. So we start DJ now the place I go on a waste star. To the point where is that they must say me win the clash now and the biggest DJ this up on my way now and everybody know I say, yo, I'm Miss Lucille's boy, I him win the clash, you know.
What was your name at this time here?
I never have no name, just basically Clifford. So I didn't have nobody never knew me like to be an artist and an upcoming a new artist and nothing like that. It was just me, see the man in my clash and just want to jump in because of course, remember me I sing for the girls in my school and I'm singing for like Zoe in my evening time. So my confidence kind of, enlarged.
And you remember the name of the song that it was that you guys were
clashing? I remember, but people up the way remember the song. I don't remember the sound, but at the big sound up our way. Like once they get a singer for that sound, you're the man. So Wingy is a man that run the sound, a theme sound basically. Them rate him like that, like him the big man. So after me come to boom and win the clash now, the people them want to hear more. I say I can't sing to, you know. Seeing? And I put on the Chuck Turner rhythm B. Seeing? And I say, I can take a woman and leave her alone. A temporary lover come and go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're the kind of woman that I ever know. And the place start going away, the girls them start scream. Jesus said, cause I don't wanna leave without you. Yeah, me like I'm frightened virgin. when a man pull it up, see him? Like when them days when they pull up music and the turntable make nice and the needle make nice. And that alone give you a euphoric feeling, you know. You see him? So when I say, yo, the place a bust. The forward when me even get into the clash, me never even them forward they are bigger than in the clash.
Okay.
So that's now I think Zul Palmer here about me from this now. You trying to my way, you know. We say with them time them say the producer. So him came go Music Mountain. Take me from school one day and came go Music Mountain. Me and I youth named Larky Pang, which is end up being Gully Bop.
Hold on. So you know Gully Bop from way back then?
Yeah, man.
Because I didn't even think, remember where we are, because we're going to continue. I didn't really think that Gully Bop was an artist. I thought that they just found him after a while and then he just started to do stuff then.
He's one of the baddest DJ as Larky Pang and later on, because you hear his talent. He's like one of the baddest. Like I distinctly, when they found him in the gully, you understand? Because for years I was wondering, what happened to Larky Pang? For years. I never realized that him to change his name to Mr. Countryman when he used to DJ with Country Speng. So for years, me I try, because it's a youth who did the rate, me and the man Zul Palmer go up on the hill and he want me sing and him DJ go straight from Music Mountain where I walk from Stony Hill, go to Music Mountain, which is like very far up in the hills. And him DJ go straight up on the hill and me and him a sing and him a DJ and me always wonder, what happened to Larky Pang? Couldn't find him.
That's so wild. Just the fact that, again, he was doing his stuff, disappeared, and then came back after a while. That's crazy there. All right, so you guys went to go record the song here now?
You see him now left my country song. Yes, I. So I record a song, you know, and of course, you know, as an upcoming producer and an upcoming artist, so the money not there for really fund the project. So the little money was Zul Palmer save up him, use it to do the studio time and make the beat. So after that, you know, the program basically parked the program because no money not there. So I went to my mom because we believe so much in the song, and I went to my mom and told her I was getting a visa to go to America. So everything I got changed now, mama. I go make you come out of the boardhouse now, and life I got different now because I go foreign and I go find my brothers them and my sisters them, because I have some brothers and sisters by my father's side that I've never met. So I go find them when I go foreign now, and then I go, you know, I go get rich, because them days I think say once I get on a plane and reach a foreign is a better rose.
Yeah.
You understand? So you know, she reluctantly, you know, lend me the money. And I took the money, you know, after my pressure for quite a while. I took the money now to Zul Palmer and to mix the song and cut the stamper. So he mixed the song, and when he went to cut the stamper, the song, they mixed the hi-hat too high in the song. So it couldn't cut. So the youth now doing a dynamic sound at I think his name is Simo. Where the man, the bass guy, the master, the record, the song, cut the stamper and master. Like the master, you know, you see them have no. That started out. I remember that from dynamic sound, we them have to make sure so everything is, you know, have a balance. Everything have a balance. So the man warned him and say, "Yo, this can't cut, you know. If it cut when it play upon the sound system or upon the radio, it's go noisy, because the high are too high." So I remember back in them days, you know, the tweet and them thing they have a tune.
And the horns and all of that stuff.
Everything. So anything off, it got pick up in the tweet of them, or in the top end. You see? So so the Simo, I think Simo, I don't want to call him name wrong. People know me at all though. Him warn him and say, "Yo, be careful." And him actually never cut it. So him went to Sonic Sound, because Sonic Sound had a similar plant. So the youth of Sonic Sound say, "Him will cut it." So when him cut it and him get the record, him buy up and press up the records them, and try to play upon a sound system exactly where the person at Dynamic Sound tell him. So everything flop.
Okay, so what name do you record under at this time here now?
Them time it was I think them come Sprangy them time, because I'd have a lot of bump in my face, so them that come Sprangy at school. So it was kind of basically a try out different names. I think it was Prangy. I don't quite remember, but I think it was Prangy Zul put on the record. Or Scary, whether Scary or Sprangy, one of those names.
And then how did that project do for you?
It flopped, man. It couldn't play upon the sound system or the radio. You can't go get a radio man and the radio man say, "Yo, it's noisy."
So then the money that you invested, your mom's money, blew up. Everything is gone now.
Blew up, brother. Blew up. Big time. So the fast forward to years after, you know, hanging out at studios with I remember discovering Pickout. Yeah. So Pickout was one of the producers that took a liking to my sound. Yeah. That was like years after singing on Small Axe sound system at Big Yard, because I came back to live in Kingston. And I used to sing on the sound system that my cousin owned, Small Axe. So I used to see the Pliers, them and the Pinchers, them and all of these great artists came, and them perform on the sound system and mash up the place, and it was just like inspiration to me. Yeah. So years after I met Pickout, and Pickout believed in me, and he was like really every day I used to hang out with Pickout now down by Dynamic Sounds, because Pickout now, he was like hustling to sell 45. When the people come from country to buy records, you know, you have people like Pickout who used to hang out at Dynamic Sounds and Tough Gang, and these places, these pickup points where record shop owners would come and buy records, and then you see, you know, these producers like a Pickout, they would like try and sell these people records straight from the car. So I used to like just watch Pickout them doing that on a daily, and him believe in me and try record some song with me and some cover songs. So it never really, they never really go anywhere still. Yeah.
Pickout was a big label. That's the same one that had, like, I think Ninja Man, Tinga Stewart. Yeah. I think Wayne Wonder did some work over there too.
Pliers, I think he was the first one who recorded Pliers. He was the one who gave Pliers his first big record. I think My Love Is Burning. I think that was Pickout's record.
Yeah, for sure. That was it. And there was some more songs on that same Juggling right there also.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So then now, did you get your name Mr. Vegas at this time here now?
Not yet. I think I think it was a toss up between Clifford Smith, some people that I was trying to get attention from, musical attention from. They were like, Clifford, like my brother in Tamlins, Carlton. Me and him used to have like quarrels, like I must use my right name, you know. So him used to be like, you know, Barrington Levy, and these people are using the right name, use a name. And I was like, yo, no, man, that's an old man name, man. Now I go work on the stage, B. We bring on stage Clifford Smith. I just couldn't see it, but him, you know, he was bent on like, you call yourself your right name, and you share my name. Your father gave the name there, you know. And I think we used to use Scary, or, you know, one of them names there. It's just like so many different names. You know.
Okay. Before we even gloss over this part here, you say your brother was in the group Tamlins?
My brother is in the group Tamlins, Carlton.
I had no idea, boss.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so this is something that runs somewhat in the family then?
Not somewhat. Runs in the family big time. Music.
Who else? Is there any other family members that's in music also?
Not at I wouldn't say it's as successful as Tamlins or myself, but like Sandy, you know, that sings with Alba Rosie, and she's a recording artist as well. You know, so we have family members who are doing music, but maybe not at the level that we are at the level where we are at.
Got you. That makes sense, sir. All right, so you're trying your stuff out at Pickout. You're DJ and singing on Small Axe Sound. So what's the next move after that there? After
the trying to break at Pickout, around Pickout, and that didn't work. I think Pickout left to England. Yeah, I think Pickout left to England. And then my brother, Tony, I was in the military. He left the military, and he went overseas. So he came back, and he produced a few covers with me.
Okay.
So I was basically a part of the production. I pressed the records up, recorded Panhead on one of the beat.
What?
Yeah, man. So my brother Tony now would basically, you know, recorded Panhead with a song named One Up, right? Because he want to give the beat a little bit of attention. He want to put some strength on the rhythm, so to surround the project with other artists. Yeah, so we recorded Panhead, and I was the one walking and selling the Panhead record and my record. So when I went to, like, you know, I started doing the same thing that Pickout was doing. You know, have the record them, you know, in a bag. When the man them come from country and them they are Tough Gang, because I'm not letting us inside where the people them come to buy the record from Tough Gang, or inside where they buy the records from Dynamic Sounds. So when the people them come from country, or the record shop man them come to buy a record on Fridays, records on Fridays, I would try to sell them some records so them like the Panhead. You know? So it's something started the local producing thing, selling records. And then that didn't work out now. And my mom wrote me a letter. In the letter, she basically said, I'm wasting my life away, and I'm going to end up like a croft and so forth and so on. So I was kind of, I understood you know, but then I really understood what she was saying, because of course me take her money, go send me I go a foreign, and and I know me can't reach a foreign, I know she can't send a visa, not all. And this is like years after. So when she wrote me that letter, of course, I left music and I opened a cook shop.
Okay, really, whatever she said to you had really touched you. You said, you know what, let me try something else, because this doesn't seem to be working either.
Yeah, man. I left music and opened a cook shop.
And what year is this we're talking about now?
This would have been maybe 94.
94.
Because it was maybe about 3 years before I got the break in 97. So this would have been around 94. Yeah. So I went and I opened a cook shop. I called the shop Scary. Right. So I was selling basically like food, like lunch out of the shop. And after a confrontation with a chef that I used one day, and me and him had a fallout, because you know people were returning their food because the food never cooked good. So he came one day and said, you know, if me not pay him, he might go chop me up. So I was like, I gave the money the other day and throw it back, give me, because I never give him enough. So I try to make him understand, say, yo, we never make the money that day. I still give you some money. I give you more than half of what I normally pay my chef. But my chef never turned up that day when I used him. So he had a cutlass in his back and I had a knife now, just cut up some chicken. So when I see like him a dip for the cutlass now, I chop on him with the knife. And somehow the knife cut him on him hand. And same time police are pass and see the man and I believe.
What's the chances?
As soon as the man get the cut, the police are pass and see the man and I bleed. So them grab me and carry me down to the camera around to the Patrick City police station. Then later subsequently transferred me to the Hunts Bay police station. So it was at the Hunts Bay police station now where, you know, they had me in a cage in the night, and the next day they took me down to the jail where all of the bad people them they know. So I was like, yo, this is like I live in hell, you know, the smell and everything. And so when I reached the jailers, them start asking if me have my rent and them thing there. I say, you have your rent? And I say, I don't have no money. And the man I say, hey boy, you come to man place and you don't have no rent. So then the next man said, bring him over here, so. So when I went over when they dragged me over to the next cell, a youth now named Kirk from Duane Park, from Brook Valley, was in jail, and I know him. So I just hear a man say, no man, how are you, man? He's a singer, you know. Hey man, how are you? He's a singer. A good youth. So a man jump up and say, singer? You know how long we want a radio?
Wow, welcome to the big house. First it's the rent. You don't have no rent, you better could sing.
But even prior to that, before the person, somebody dragged me over to the cell where Kirk was. I later found out that it was Kirk that said, how are you? Right? But when I reach, like, the man, they must say, yo, you have your rent? And next man I say, yo, see a 6 foot fan here, you know. You know, that means you have a spin popular on them thing there.
They're dealing with you rough in there, boss.
So I escaped that now because the youth now named Kirk in the jail and identified me and said, yeah man, how are you? Him can sing. So when I went into the jail now, a man says, you know, long want a radio, me done. And I say, radio? Man, I say, yeah, man. Man say, you see that? You see right there? Just climb up on the grill and just start sing. So I climb up on the grill and the man say, yo, mind your bow up on the grill, you know. Be a piss man, piss on that, you know. You see? The man say, sing, the man. And we are the shy. Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Oh, you said the man a singer. I don't sing at this man. Somebody just said, just take these chains away and set me free. Release me out of bondage. agree. Whole jail start mash up, man.
Now you're doing something good now.
Yeah, man, the whole jail start mash up. I couldn't stop singing. I sing until I can't talk.
You're the radio boss.
So as a man stress out, so I just hear a man say, "Me want go on me," and cause some bad word. "Me want go on me very yard." Yo, where the singer there? Yo, drop a tune for me, man. I have to climb up back on the grill. Yeah, man, I said, "Yo, Star, I miss me, girl. Where the singer there?"
Wow.
Jump up back on the grill. Oh, I know what seems to me. Caught up inside our dreams all my life. Bring all the tears of sad memories. Couldn't stop singing.
Yeah. So it was a lot of Sanchez style that you were singing.
Yeah, man, definitely. That was like my idol growing up, like just the way he was able to his voice was clean. The texture of his vocals is like I've never heard internationally and locally. I don't think there's any singer outside of Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston that that the texture of their vocal. Tevin Campbell has that as well.
Mm-hmm. That just
naturally the vocals and the pitch. Where his range is incredible.
Crazy. Okay, so you're here. You've now become the radio inside a jail and stuff. So how long were you locked up for?
I was there for 1 day.
Okay.
And, in the night, I heard Clifford Smith. You get bail. Pack up your things, them. So then the whole jail was like, "You are the singer left, And a man said, "Youth, any man mash up jail must bust." I remember that distinctly. A man said, "Any man mash up jail must bust." And that basically was the catalyst that started the movement of me getting back into that jail. That's why sometimes some disappointment is for good. Because prior to that, I was just basically focusing on the cook shop.
Mm-hmm.
So that experience in jail, it revived, the person who I was born to be.
Makes sense. So you came out now. Still, did you get this name Mr. Vegas yet, or you're still just a singer?
No, I didn't get the name Mr. Vegas yet.
Okay.
People used to call me Scary. Some people call me Scarface. Yeah.
Okay. So then now when you came out of jail, what was your first movements then?
I went back to the cook shop and was trying to, struggle with, should I close down this thing and go back at the studio? So one day I was in the cook shop and I was singing. Because I come out of jail fresh now, just mash up jail, so I start singing more. Mm-hmm. So I was singing in the cook shop and a car passed. And then I saw the car reversing. Mm-hmm. And a man pushed out the middle of the car and said, "Walk this boy. Come out of the cook shop and go to studio."
Crazy.
Anthony Red Rose.
Wow. And did you ever meet this man before?
I don't remember where I met Red Rose.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow the man just reversed the car that day. And that was it.
Crazy. So all the signs were there. You got it when you're coming out of jail. They said, "Listen, anybody that could do this in jail, you could go outside and do it." And then you just happen to see Anthony Red Rose.
Yep.
That sent you on your journey.
Yep. I was just in this cook shop because I used to have a factory down the a few feet away from the cook shop where I used to serve them lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I used to cater to them. So of course, they enjoyed. They were like, "You can sing here." So that encouraged me, and I always like singing in the cook shop. When I came back from jail, I just singing, and some girls start giving me the eye. I start singing more. So it's like me, I sing loud one day, and one Red Rose a pass. Me don't know how him hear me. Man just reverse the car and say, "Walk this boy. Come out of the cook shop and go to studio."
Crazy. What was the move after that then?
I ended up at Big Ship.
Okay.
ended up a big ship because my niece now, she a brother named Noel Brownie, I try to look her. So my niece now somewhere mentioned me and tell me something, you know, she knew a man named Noel Brownie around a big ship. Freddie McGregor studio. So I'm going to link Noel Brownie. Yeah. And he promised that he was going to record me. So, but I was there like for days, hanging out for days and nothing. He went on tour with Freddie McGregor, came back, and I was just like there, you know, waiting, and nothing happened. Until one day he came back and he called me and he was like, sing with me here, yo. And I started singing and he played a little beat and then he leave it and he go back. So then an engineer in the studio now named Jeremy and Ford. Right, I think it's Ducky Simpson's son from Black Uru. Yeah. Him now build a rhythm for Dan Youth. So I screeching at the studio now I hear the rhythm I play. You know, Freddie McGregor studio. So I hear the rhythm playing and I didn't know I hum to the rhythm, you know. And I said, I heard she sang a good song. I heard she had a style. And the man look up and say, yo, that sound good, eh? Go on in the booth. Jeremy. And from him said, go in the booth, sing the song. Yeah. And Dan Youth came, because it's Dan Youth him making the rhythm for.
Got you.
But Dan Youth came to the studio and the man said, no, sir, that little youth, let me just make him sing on the rhythm, him song bad, you know. And I said, let me hear it. And Dan Youth heard it and said, yo, bad, you know. Now I do a combination on it. So Dan Youth jump on.
First combination now.
Yeah.
For your career. Got you.
So Dan Youth now jump on it, the song. Cha la 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 la, hot girl, them a big dress, da 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 da. Now see no girl style and go for la la la. And him press up the record, Zane, and me and him up on the road now. Kind of a song now with Wayne Wonder, Excess Amount of Loving. So Dan Youth got to do the Red Stripe tour. A Red Stripe had a road show with Brick and Lace. Yeah, that time Brick and Lace was the whole, like 5 of the sisters. So Dan Youth and me up on the road now, and he wanted me to sing the Wayne Wonder part and Excess Amount of Loving. So I would sing that and then we sing Killing Me Softly as the combination. So me and him start go country and him place and him start, you know, call me up to sing the song, the Wayne Wonder part, then we sing Killing Me Softly. Zane. So that's how we start get, you know, more interested in the music and feel like a little thing out for go on. And then he recorded Beanie Man on the beat. Yeah, so it start get some traction now. They start, you know, I in my house one day in Patrick City and a bus a pass and I just hear, I heard she sang a good. I was like, yo, me that on the radio, you know. Yeah.
A different feeling.
That was the one who, sorry, go ahead.
No, you get a totally different feeling altogether.
Yeah. That basically start you know, change everything. Like the mindset start change now. I kind of feel like something about to happen. Seeing? So Dan Youth now took me up to Jeremy Harding. Yeah. Because he was recording for Jeremy. And that was where I met Sean Paul, them and Kid Corrupt, them and Daddy Gun, them, the whole Dirty Cup crew. So Dan Youth introduced me to Jeremy Harding. I didn't get to record on the first project the project that Dan Youth was recording on at that time. But it was just the fact saying, can I go to the studio and I get to know Jeremy. Then he took me around Weepo, run a Stone Love. And Weepo heard me singing and liked my voice. So Weepo made me sing a song on Love Bump Rhythm. Name Every Time. Seeing? Where everybody thinks it's Sanchez.
Back then, everybody thought this song was Sanchez.
If you look on YouTube right now, you see the song Every Time, it's a Sanchez.
That's wild.
Right. Because everybody, even Weepo, you know, people were telling Weepo that, yeah, man, the Sanchez tune the bad, you know.
Yeah.
And when we even make it sound more like Sanchez, Tony Curtis came in the studio and did the harmonies. And you know, it's like a similar vocals to Sanchez.
Yeah.
So me, I was looking at Sanchez sound and Tony Curtis doing the background on the song. So it start playing in the club them with the Sanchez song, because Sanchez had a song on that time, For You. Mm-hmm. For you I give on the same rhythm. See? I mean, me up on the say, ooh girl, it's been a long, long time coming. So everybody else has Sanchez sing the two songs. That's so after that whole singing vibes, you know, seeing a youth named De La Soul now from Brook Valley. Of course, I like a movement. I go on, people, my name start mentioning in the sound system circle maybe. Based on the Dan Youth song, yeah, and I actually sang last night on the same beat too. So I have two songs on the rhythm. So De La Soul now want me to do some dub plate and he want me to get some other artist. Yeah. So I say, who you can get some dub from? I say, yo, so I meet Cabra and him real cool. So I can ask him for, seeing I can get Dan Youth, seeing and I can do 2 tunes for you. The 2 tunes I have because, So him give me that cassette and of course, I get the tune them. See, I get the tune them. So me I plan now to go back to De La Soul now with that cassette. To give him it. And of course, him that give me a little thing. So I now we come from foreign. He's a family member of some of my family, but not my family member. By their mother's side. Seeing? Him knows the man just walk up to me and say, where did that cassette there? So I was like, which that cassette? The one that Della give you? And I said, me never get it from you. And me and Della business that. So by me says I walk with the man just use a piece of iron and just lit me across my face. So my jawbone basically shattered. I'm saying? Shattered. Then I there at Patrick City. Okay? Yeah.
So listen, so far, you got cut, you went to jail, you shattered your jawbone.
Yeah, man.
And this is all before you really took off in music business. So all of this here is going to happen in your life already. Okay, let's continue.
So after he broke my jawbone, that time the only person I really knew in the music them time, that time I hang out on a WePo, run a Stone Love, because WePo lived close by. So I used to just go to Stone Love. So when my jawbone broke, the only person I knew in the music them time, that basically we could have called upon it like Dan Youth. Seeing? And I went down to the public hospital. Yeah. And they wired my mouth and sent me home. It wasn't nothing for them to admit me or anything. I hear somebody say they couldn't find any bed. People don't admit you if you have a broken jawbone. It was why I'm out and send you home. Yeah, so a lot of fabrication on the story. So I went there and they said, oh, your jawbone is broken after them do the x-ray. So they wired my mouth and sent me home. But I had the playground rhythm that Jeremy Harding gave me. So during this time now where my mouth was wired shut, I was just there finding a lot of melodies on the rhythm. Yeah. Trying to sing through my teeth. So basically I was just like humming melodies. Unable to eat or anything like that. I just was there like music. So I had the beat playing, and then I heard about a story about the same youth named Kirk was saved me in a jail. Was our youth. I heard a story about him that happened in Brook Valley, where him trick a girl with a pair of Nike shoes. Seeing? So the story was like a popular story that everybody was speaking about, the way how him, you know, the craftiness. So him use some form of artifice on the girl, and you know. So I basically started writing about, I wrote about the experience. Yeah, with Nike here. So Nike is actually a story from the same man in a jail. We met the man them not dealing with wicked.
Crazy, boss. Crazy. Okay. And I'm gonna ask you, at this time here now, did you have the name Mr. Vegas at this time?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How did you get this name? And what year did you get this name?
All right. I don't remember the exact year, but the name now came about now when I was playing soccer one day. And I'm just not a good soccer player. You know, you're Jamaican, you can't play football, you're like the biggest scruff. Like, you know, good. Like, you know, ratings are dead if you can't play football at Jamaica. Like,
yeah.
You not even get picked on the team. Nobody know how to play because you're going to lose the ball. See? So me didn't know, and, you know, me not play good. So my cousin Leaford started cuss me. I say, yo, you play like a bitch.
Yeah.
See, and I say, Virgin. And the man started get wicked for me. I say, yo, you come like the girl them up at Las Vegas. So everybody start laugh. Just like when you laugh.
Yeah.
See, and me alone now laugh. And me I say, yo. Cry, me want to cry because everybody will laugh. So I start rebel. See, and everybody know, every time I touch the ball, a man say, my ball Vegas. So I just come off of the field. So the name basically, you know, stuck on me. So after them keep on calling me, I start answer to the name.
Because you know already, listen, the more you fight it is the more so just okay, you know what, cool. Okay, so then originally it was just Vegas.
Yeah.
And then I guess when did you decide to put on the Mr. now to
Daniel did
Mr. Vegas?
Daniel did that. When Daniel discovered me, when Jermaine introduced Daniel to me, same name Vegas. Right? The man said, Vegas is one place. You need to make it more personal, you know, personified it. So he said, Mr. So people can know he's a person. So Daniel was the one who add on the Mr. upon it. Yeah.
That's a good one there. All right. So then, as you're saying, you now have the name Mr. Vegas. Don't have no real hits. You have some street stuff bubbling or whatsoever.
Right. Cover song there.
Yes. So then now you got the thing there. You got to Jeremy Harden, and you have the playground rhythm. You're trying to write your song on it, but your jaw is wired. Continue from there. So
I link Cabra, because I get a link with Cabra now when he do the dub plate for me for De La Soul. Right? And Cabra, I asked him to beg Jeremy to wait, you know, for me to get on the rhythm before I release it. So I called Jeremy and I was like, you know, Jeremy, I'm still wire in the doctor, so 6 weeks. And the man I say, he have to release the rhythm because Beenie Man just voice. That is would have been Zim Zim and all.
Crazy.
And the Beenie Man want him song come out because everybody, the whole place now, you know, back in those days, people know say a song hit before it leave the studio. From the record the day, people know the Beenie Man song is going to be a big hit. So the pressure dep on Jeremy for release the thing, and him wait upon this little one young singer when nobody don't know. And him say, I can hold it till next week, you know. So I just went down to public, told the doctors that, you know, I have to take this wire out now, you know. The doctors were like, yo, you know, we can't take this thing out. You're not in a setback yet. The bones them not finish heal. I was like, Doc, trust me. It's going to change my life. But need them why I have to take out, Doc. Boom, and the man bust the first one and bust the next one and bust the next one. And I went straight to the studio, same time, no food, nothing. Because I remember I didn't eat for like five weeks. Right away, I jump on a bus, straight to Barbican. You show up at Jeremy. Yeah, man. And Jeremy say, you sure you can do this? So he put the beat on. He put the beat on, and of course, when he put the beat on, I sing through my teeth. Cause my mouth still, you know, even though the wires them come out, my mouth still can't open as it used to open. So I was just basically like, when my office is on in the air, whenever I get me feel and I care. And him said, you can't walk me up, you can't walk me more, look at him. That have a beer pain, you know, crazy pain. Yeah, crazy pain. So I was like, when my office is on in the air, and I never get a slam yet, feel and I care. And it worked.
That's crazy. And this is a song that changed your entire life right here.
Yep. When that song came out, of course, when it just came out, I was not getting any plays because I was on the B side of the Danyuts song.
Danyuts on the Playground Rhythm too?
Yeah, I'm on the B side of Danyuts song.
Okay.
Because you know, them days when the record come out, you have A side and B side. So I was like the version.
Yeah, because that's generally what's on the next side would be the main song on A, rhythm on B. So
instead of Jeremy cut a stamper, an extra stamper for me, him just use my song as the version. Yes,
So you basically weren't even supposed to, you were just supposed to come out and just be out. You weren't even supposed to get any play in the first place.
Right. So no one even realized that I was on the B side until a youth named Youthman Troy from IRFM that he used to play a lot of young artists, but he had a late show in the night. So one night, this radio just happened to be on, and I'm home, and I just see the man wheel up the song like how much times. Crazy.
What did that do for your career? Where did you start going now?
Well, after Youthman Troy, I heard Youthman Troy playing it. Then I heard it on Hits 102. Yeah. I don't remember what was the name of the station first. It's Hits 102 now. I think it was Radio 2, I think. With Garfield Hamilton. Yeah. When Garfield Hamilton, back in them days, play your song in the Saturday morning juggling, you know you're hot. So I heard the Garfield Hamilton wheel up the song about 10 times. It on the Beanie Man, him just play the Beanie Man and then play my song. Play the Beanie Man, play my song, play the Sean Paul. So them 3 songs just in a rotation on the beat. And Nike now I play with the Beanie Man more than any other songs on the beat. So then it started to take off in the dance.
Okay.
So Squeeze now was doing was the one that played the music at the World Cup events. So whenever match I go on at the World Cup qualification rounds, is Squeeze playing at the stadium. So Squeeze now, one of the youth from the sound system linked me. I want me to do the dub plate. Seeing? So I say, well, I want for so no one in the air. We have to reach the World Cup next year. Everybody now at the stadium see the forward now, like the biggest forward. Following the rhythm, come on, burp, 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 burp. But the chicken out, die do. Trust me. But that's how the song boss, Nike boss, at the World Cup qualification round them.
That's where you got the real big one. Because it seems like even your ad-lib style, it seems like Danyut was a big influence on your ad-lib styles.
Danyut played a role in a big role in my upbringing in music. But those ad-libs came from Quenchade.
Okay.
Quenchade, because I used to sing on a song named Echo Rock. with Quenchade and a youth named Singing Sweet. We used to be like this, but Quenchade was like a big star. Everybody I caught Quenchade pan dub. Everywhere you go, you hear Quenchade. So we thought Quenchade was gonna be like, massive, in terms of like Pinchers them and Sanchez them and them great artists that were running the whole place. He was that good. Yeah. But Quenchade used to have a thing when he must sing. He used to sing what he used to have a style and say dying, and something like that, and it was just a sound. And I was like, the day I sing Nike here, I write Nike here, I just hear it in my head. So I just add things to it. Chicken out, die do. But if you listen to Quenchade early song, him basically was just die do. Yeah, that him used to say. He used to say die do.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's actually from Quenchade, that whole vibe, that whole style.
All right. So you have Nike Ear here bubbling now. That right there, you said it started the dub plate played in the stadium, bust the place now. All right. What did that do for your career? Where were you going now? Were you voicing more songs, or what happened for you from there?
No, I did a song with Cabra, right, for a youth, and it came up, but it never really took off big. And then after, going up and down all over the place now, I ended up see Goofy on the beach one day, Mr. G. And the man say, yo, Danny Brown have a rhythm when just record and it's the baddest rhythm in the whole world. So I basically said, I have to get on that rhythm where Goofy tell me about, Mr. G. So somehow I end up around a Main Street studio. Yeah, later now to find out that Goofy, was one of the one way I encouraged Danny Brown to record me on the beat too, because I never know where I go on inside of the studio. But what I did was I went to Danny's wife and give her a beer joke at daytime, just tell her a beer story and give her a beer joke and say, remember, when you go home tonight, yeah, man, just remember.
Yeah.
Remind Danny, say, if you vice pan the rhythm, you can trust me. 100 hours, I gotta be getting for that. I've never vice and bossing, you trust me, you're rich, And, after days, begging, one day I went there and she said to me, "Him a go vice here, Yeah. And he called me in the studio and he gave me the beat. And him say, everything done mix, as a chance me a give you, if you can do it today. Just get the beat, everything. But you're the good thing now. When I went down to my cousin Kirky house, because Kirky have a thing where we can play the CD. Right? I don't remember CD or tape them time, but whatever he gave me time. I think I CD, because CD they come in time there. So anyway, him give me the rhythm. And Kirky had something compatible with whatever he gave me. So, of course, as I put in the rhythm song, me just hear the melody from a song where I started writing around my niece them when I was at, of a Moonlight, where we live. I remember them come from school one day and I tell me about a girl where them catch in school. I do something to a guy, a boy in school. So I'm there basically telling them to hold them heads high. They say, yeah, make sure you hold phone heads high, and do the work, really. Just heads high and kill them with the no. I just said that. And it just rang. So me in the house now just start saying, heads high, kill them with the no. Just make a boy know you not blow. Heads high and kill them with the no. And we'll take it for joke. So when Danny gave me the beat now, and I went by Kirky's house, we don't have the chorus. So when I listen to the beat, I hear the mute I was sing, the rapper them was sing, meet me at the crossroad. What name again?
Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Bone Thugs and Harmony. When I listen to the beat, I hear Bone Thugs and Harmony melody. You see? I hear, so I was like, yo, me I hear a melody because that is how me write music. Like me I hear something. some frequency. May I hear something in the beat where I give me a melody in the rhythm like me can hear something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, no, man, I need something like that, man. And them time that the Bone Thugs and Harmony is a big song.
Mm-hmm.
So I son out and I said, I want you skin your teeth and let me see it. If you're sure from your bond, say you never do it. So basically, is that inspiration from Bone Thugs and Harmony or that ear there?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Basically, a kind of, what they call it now, you know? It cause the whole frequency for go that way there.
That's wild. So then now you have the Nike here. So then now this one here is the next big one, the Heads High, on that you've now recorded. So the first one was for Jeremy Harden. The next one is for Danny Browning. Danny Browning, Main Street. Okay.
Right.
Who was at Main Street when you got there?
Mr. G, Red Rat, Lady G, General Degree, Buccaneer. Those were some of the people that Mad Andrew was there, I think. Go ahead.
And they're established artists at this time already, or they're just all on the come up?
Yeah, man, big artists, man. Big artists. Monsters. And everybody recorded already on the beat, and I heard that Spragga Benz was on the beat too. And everybody had talked about Spragga tune.
Mm-hmm.
You see the same thing I tell you that song bust before them even come out.
Mm-hmm.
So people are talk about the Spragga tune. You know, like me, I hear about the Spragga tune. I never even know say upon the beat it there. You understand? Like I'm over squeeze and the youth, them, the selector, them I talk about the song. I say, yo, Spragga have a song. Body song. See? So when I go into the studio now, I run back, I put the verse them on the chorus now. See? I use the driver and come check me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I use where in the music. The driver come check me and him have a rhyme dictionary. See? So I said to him, lend me a rhyme dictionary. So I saw now you hear the rhyme them so tight. Skin your teeth, let me see it, show from your band, say you never do it. And a freak, one man you keep. Never yet complain, say you're deep. Make your vow, yo. Chow, them things here. So I get some of my Barham rhyme dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? That are the only part in playing of the song, my Barham rhyme dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
See? So after I finish now, me and my cousin Kirk, go back up on Main Street. Yeah? And went into the studio and Danny Brown put on the rhythm and say, you ready? Let me hear what you have. I'm going to start singing it from outside and the man said, go around there. Yo, when the man said, go around, my life changed. Me just feel, even though I'm nervous,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody record already. The only way me can make this beat, is if me go hard, Bridget.
Second time now.
The second, not the second time recording, but
no, but I mean, as in, this is the second time where you're like the last one in the door.
Yep. Very last. The beat closed, mix up and everything already.
Mm-hmm.
So when he sent me around here and I start chop it, man.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished, we needed an intro, right? And go around here and put on the intro. No. Kill them with it. And Danny Brown was going crazy in the studio. And he just stopped the whole studio and he said, I'm a lead the rhythm, Me nearly drop.
I remember this big Spragga Benz you hearing about is tearing down the place, is about to come out as a monster too. But
brother, when the man said, him a lead the rhythm, I said, I need them wobble. And General Degree said, a real thing you talk,
Mm-hmm.
A true man. I'm sorry, I'm saying, a true you talk, man, a true you talk. Yep.
That's wild. And what's the name of the rhythm? Just so everybody's
Filthy.
Yep. That had the Degree, it had the Spragga, the U, it had basically everybody was on that rhythm there. Crazy rhythm that plays till this day.
Yep. Anthems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what year was this here that you recorded?
97.
97. Okay. So then now you have two big songs under your belt now. What happens from here now?
Billy Slaughter went to Miami. He came back and said to me, your song mashed up the whole of Miami last night. The song not even released good yet, December, this song just came out. And the song already bust in Miami. He played it at Spirit nightclub. And came back and said, yo, the song mashed up the whole club. And 2 weeks after, I discovered Richard Stevens introduced me to Murray, that became a manager, brother named Murray. And in no time, I was on my way to Miami. It's just the quickest turnaround.
To go to the same place that
but I lied to my mom about the visa. It's the quickest. I got passport, BAM, and visa in record time. That time, WIPO was playing a significant role in my career because WIPO was the one who got me my first write-up. He even sent me to voice training, WIPO.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that time it was, like I was transitioning to let Murray manage me, but WIPO was like my godfather. Like I him a guide the thing. Seeing it was like the person when we really talk to about what the next move. Yeah. So I remember him getting me a write up in the X News, and then the song went number one. The Nike song went number one in the X News. Back in those days, when the song went number one in any one of these charts, it was a big thing because it was based on record sales. Yeah. And then Balfour Henry had it in his chart, the Stars chart. So I that and I had Head's Eye. So when I reached Miami, perform at the Spirit nightclub. Plus I did have two little things I can sing to. So I sing two of the Sanchez thing them too. So I get them a nice little show on the whole play. When I draw Nike and Head's Eye. Mash up. Then I came back to Jamaica and performed that Sting. Right? So the Leng wanted me to do a performance with Dan Youth and Sean Paul.
Okay.
In the Starlight segment. So I declined. I said, with all due respect to Sean Paul and Dan Youth, but tonight, I need to make the people them say Vegas. So I not do it unless I get to sing as Vegas. You understand? Because my energy kind of different. My energy is more like a vibrant person on stage, run and jump over the sun, swing me hand and go on with beer things, and it's a different energy.
Did you learn the art of performing at this time here yet, or you had an idea of how it goes?
Had an idea, but I think it's something that is innate. You understand? I just think that energy, the frequency when music hits you, everybody react different. You understand? So I just wanted to do Sting by myself because I knew this was going to be the pivotal moment to launch my career upon a major platform. So I was actually in the Starlight segment. So after they called up Sean Paul performed, they called up Dan Youth. Dan Youth went up with Sean Paul, actually. Yeah. And then I went up by myself. And that was the breaking point. That was a good call.
What year, Sting?
This was Sting 97.
Yeah, you see the trick with Sting, it's like, listen, because that's one of the last shows for the year. From you do Wicked on Sting, that's it. You're gone for the rest of the year.
Yep. That was it.
Okay, you said you got your second hit from over at Main Street. How come you didn't sign with Main Street?
Because I went to Richard Stevens. Because Colette Brownie, Danny's wife, I think she wanted me to sign my publishing to Main Street, right? Either her or Danny. So I went to Richie because I was thinking about letting Main Street manage me, But of course, Main Street had their acts. And again, I wanted to be, a solo act.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be a part of a crew or a group. I wanted to get my break, and then I can build my own community. So when I went to Richard Stevens told me about Murray. And, I later saw Goofy, Mr. G, and he confirmed that Murray was a good person. So Murray started managing me right there. Mm-hmm. And I was basically the only act he had at that time. So more focus could be placed on my career where, the planning and everything. We were going around doing school shows and going around Jamaica, just driving around. Me and Murray driving in his little white car all over Jamaica. Sometimes, me have to watch him if I go drop asleep. So I hold a conversation with him, mm-hmm. To make sure him not drop asleep. Mm-hmm. But we went all over Jamaica in that little white car just to spread the name. And then Richard Stevens recorded, but everywhere I go, but the girl them just for me while me starring at them show. So me have another song now with the two song them now, and that I play hard on the radio. So when we got like the country place them now, that shot.
Mm-hmm. And this is, you're continuing now. You have your 3 songs here. Was a thought of an album or anything in your mind at this time, or you didn't really think about that yet?
The album, I didn't think of the album as yet, because I later on recorded Hands Up for Richie D. Yeah.
On the Faith
rhythm.
Tell me how that came around.
I saw Richie D. He was trying to get some bigger artists on the rhythm, and they were turning him down. Mm-hmm. And he had Tony Curtis on the beat. And I said, let me hear it. And he played it. And I said, book the time. And he booked the time at Penthouse. And I said, you have to give me the money, man. The good man. Hmm. And I just went to Penthouse, and I don't know where the melody come from. It just happened. Just hear it, not the beat again. That is how, I think that is one of the reasons why I have lasted so long in music. Because, and if you notice the modern beats, nothing against the youth them because they might hear them thing, but the beats that Steely them and the Danny them and these people used to produce, you could hear something in the beat that basically gave you or dragged some melody out of you. There's a melody sitting in the beat. If you can identify it, and it's just not just one melody. But if you can identify it, mm-hmm. But because those beats used to be more musical. Mm-hmm. Right. So that was the Faith. Ching, 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 ching. It just melodic.
That's crazy there. All right. So then now you have 4 big songs. All right. What's going on for Mr. Vegas at this point in your career right now? Plus, you met your manager, which is, did you guys create In the Streets together, or he had In the Streets before you got there?
We created In the Streets.
You guys created it.
Right.
You're first artist, he's the manager, only you two alone doing your thing.
Yeah, we created In the Street, and he started, he was selling records before I met him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I met him, I think he started doing more of that because he was selling now Vegas records in his office, mm-hmm. and other artists that he worked with prior. Yeah. So now we have the In the Street label, and I wanted now to build, a package with other artists. So I started working with Chico. So if you look at the early stages where, Chico used to be the one that I called on stage. Mm-hmm. If you look at Sting 98 and those shows, you will see me calling up Chico. Because I wanted to build now this community, like a Shocking Vibes or like a Main Street. Yeah. So we started having artists coming around now. Yeah, started producing Chico, bringing Chico on the road with us. But Chico subsequently got signed to Dave Kelly.
That's where he basically ended up. Because if I remember, I don't remember Chico actually putting out a lot of songs on a Dave Kelly rhythm. I probably remember 2 or 3.
I honestly think that was a mistake, and I told him. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't stop him because that was his dream to be a part of Dave Kelly's camp. Because one thing with Dave Kelly, when Dave Kelly records you, chances are you're going to be, you're going to break. Mm-hmm. Bigger. because of course him have the radio, him have Colin Hines. So when Dave Kelly recorded, you know, Colin Hines I could play all the song there 100 times for one day. See? And them days it was like 3-4 radio stations. So so I think he was, you know, more leaning towards that, and not believing that we could have, get it done. Run in the street. So that was something that I blamed him for still.
I hear you. Did you actually ever record any music for Dave Kelly?
No. When Dave Kelly had a Brookout Rhythm, I had Heads Eye at #1. And Nike and everywhere I go and Hands Up. But I was recording a lot of songs. I had Sweet Pineapple for Colin Fatis and Colin Fata, and I had Shines, Big Things Are Gone. So I had a whole heap of song now, you know. All of them were not monsters, but of course, you know, new artists, I may have enough songs, you know. So of course, I check Dave Kelly. We post and I go check Dave Kelly. Me and Nico Bam Bam. Because Nico Bam Bam now want the rhythm to play over Fully Loaded. So when we reach around here now, the man said, me nah give Weepo my rhythm, you know. Because Weepo this name lick over my rhythm. Because Weepo they must build back a rhythm when Dave Kelly they do. Prior to Brookout Rhythm. So me get caught up in the middle of that. So Nico did I beg him the juggling card. Them are going to play over Fully Loaded. See? And him say, talk to you for the singer, you know. And the man just said, no, I'm not a record the singer. I don't really like skettle artists, you know. Record too much song, man.
No idea. Because today I was trying to think, did I ever hear a Vegas on a Dave Kelly production? And I could not think of one.
No. Actually, I wrote Jacket for the rhythm. Some gyal a ruffle up and a dip. Need them who a figgy the jacket. If you play a Brookout Rhythm and sing that, it fit on it like a glue. Just by hearing the rhythm, I think, I don't know how I hear the rhythm, but I don't remember if I go around there with the song. Actually, you know how I heard the rhythm? Prior to even that, Bounty Killer, you know, called me over Washington Garden and played him song for me. Yeah. I said, DJ, the body song is not the world.
On the Brookout.
On the Brookout Rhythm.
Yeah, because he had 2 on the Brookout, or it was 1 on the Brookout. I think it was 2 of them.
Can't believe my eyes.
Yeah.
First time I heard it, him called me over Washington Garden. I'm going to check him. Yep. And he played for me. Them time my career going nice and everything. Me just buy a car and drive go check him and prelude.
Everything's nice. Okay, so then you guys have your company in the streets. You have Chico. You guys are trying to build your entourage, your camp, your set of artists and stuff like this here. So then what was the next move? Chico left and went to go sign with Dave Kelly.
Right.
What was your next move?
Now we just started working on the album for Greensleeve. A brother named French, you know, come to Jamaica. A white brother. You know, and he talk patois and say, yo, what go on, man? I say, yo, which white man this? So him now get involved in the project now. So VP I try sign me and Frenchie I carry me over Greensleeve. So I start hearing stories about VP and them pay royalties and all them things from artists, you know. And because I start doing some research and start ask questions. So I didn't want to go to VP based on what I was, the narratives. Yeah. So I went to Greensleeves for the album. So I started collecting the tunes them that I did for like Richie D, Shines them, you know, and you know, compile the album with some new tunes. And the album was released, you know, I think it was 98, 99. I think it was 99. And it's still one of the best-selling albums from Greensleeves.
Heads High album.
Yeah, the best-selling album.
Yeah, no, that's classic material there. Because even this year, when did you and Sean Paul really connect? Because you said earlier you went to the studio, seeing him there, but when did you guys decide to, okay, let's sit down and record a song or some music together?
One night I was up by Jeremy Harding studio, and a brother walked into the studio yard, and he said something about some man a fight over a woman, something like that, or something the man saying at the studio yard. And Mr. Sean, you know, the man just say a while ago. No, I said Dan Youth, excuse me. I said Dan Youth. You the man just say a while ago. Bad idea that, you know. We could do a song like Kokoti and Shabba. Which one I wish you love? So Dan Youth said, go and work on it, go and work on it. And I say, yo, the man is lazy, man. That me saying in my mind. So I say, Sean, you know, you're the man just say a while ago. We could work on a song together now. So I start sing, chilla la 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 boom boom chile. Hiya na book a hot girl today. La 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 la. And I say, you have to come in now and you have to try to take away the girl from me. So I saw how the song came about. So we finished the song. Me and him write the song in Jeremy the same night after the man came in the studio and said something. So then Flabba wanted Sean Paul to record. And he also wanted me to record, but I think he more wanted Sean Paul. So I went to the studio with, you know, he called me to the studio at Tough Gang. But I have the #1 song in the country. And he wanted me and Sean Paul to do a song. So me and Sean Paul have the Hot Girl Today song that we just wrote last night. So we are telling about the song. So he must say, yeah man, he want the combination, but he want to give Sean Paul more money than me. So me I say, why can't I just bust the money too? You know, because I'm just artist with like 2 #1 right now in the charts. Jacket a #1. Heads I just left #1 because me I use #1 song and replace song, you know.
So you were, between you and Sean Paul, you were the first one to break on the ground, but not internationally. But you were the first one to get the hits.
I broke internationally before Sean Paul.
You did too?
Yeah.
But it was close, because I know, what I do remember is I remember a tour with Vegas, Sean Paul, and probably Alley Cat or somebody that came to Canada.
Right.
But it seemed like you guys, if you broke internationally first, it wasn't like, it was either months or probably like a year later where Sean Paul got the break.
No, it was long after.
It was long after.
Yeah, man. Based on the time, maybe when you saw us doing the show. But Heads I was in the British charts and the Billboard charts in '99. And Sean Paul came in the early 2000s with Deport Them.
So then why would, if you're the bigger artist at this time, why would they want to give you less money and you're even willing to say, let's go 50-50?
It was, then it felt like it wasn't just about the money anymore to me. So I was like, I'm out of here. So we didn't do the combination for Flabba. So Flabba would have gotten that combination. Maybe it wouldn't work. You understand? But that was like, yo, we can do that song for Flabba, and it fit the beat and everything. Right? We make him hear the song and everything. He must say, but you know, he want to give me less than Sean. I may say, no, brother. You can bust the money, but you can't give me the same thing when you give Sean. So I say, yo, start, Mr. DJ, Sean Paul, I go around and steal it. So I went around Steely, and Steely had the Street Sleeper rhythm. So I walk in the studio and I hear, ching, ching. I said, Jesus. So I start singing in the studio. I start humming. And the rhythm I go with that. Me tell you, it's like it make for the rhythm. And the man hear me, I hum it. And stop the music. And look around for me, but still is a man who faced him, and if I cuss him, I go cuss me through me at home. Because he will run you out of the studio, no matter who you be. So him stop, and he goes, sing that again. He said, look, you, that where them get you from? Go around there. And I said, John, what dada? You know, say that song with me and Sean Paul. We can call him, you know. See? And him said, no, I can't argue with Steely, I'm going to run you out. So I take a chance. Because I know say if Sean Paul come on the song, a problem. And I not going to do it, even though I know the lyrics and everything, I not going to do it by myself. And so I say, because I just do it and just sing Sean Paul part. Competition, I think one because of me first. So the girl, because I just barber it up and just deal with wicked. And still eat a piece of food. So I say, please, Dada, I tell her, you say if you hear him, you go record him. In bad, him sound like Super Cat. So we wait, and the man say, yeah, him not come, man. I say, him come, man. So I call him, I say, yo, where the Dada? So I finish up Vice for Flabba. Because I stay back and I recorded the song for Flabba, a song for Flabba. Right? So long after Sean Paul turn up. Yes, I. So that's now Steely get to know, Steely and Clevie get to know Sean Paul. And me came around there and basically Steely allowed up because Steely cuss people and them thing that when them take long for record. And Sean Paul is a man who take him time. I mean, if I say DJ, no man, I saw him stay. Don't come out, him good, man, him good. And record the song. So me and him end up now shoot a video for the song. So I saw now me and him start do some shows at Jamaica. So then Violet book a tour. Yeah. And Morris said, yo, we can bring Sean Paul, Vegas and somebody else. So a piece of that tour that you would see. But that time it was Hot Girl Today alone. Sean Paul had internet, but that was an international tune. Because during that time it was like it went into the Billboard R&B charts at number 5.
Okay.
Right. And the Vibes magazine rated it as one of the top 50 best collaboration of all time.
Of all time or that year?
Of all time.
And you guys are basically you have a year or two on it already. And Sean Paul's a brand new artist, and this is what they're giving you guys as artists already. That was when the song went into the Billboard R&B charts. Yeah, man. So then where did I think it was based on the hip hop reggae scene though, basically. Like those days it was, they wouldn't say dancehall, but it was like more linked to the genre of hip hop or so forth. Yeah. That makes sense because there wasn't really like the best the top 50 record of all time. Okay. Yeah. But like maybe Caribbean music or whatever. Okay. And then where did you and Sean Paul start to go from there? What started to take off for you guys? I basically started evolving into a bigger artist. I was in the pop charts in England, started in the top of the pops, won the MOBO awards. So I was like traveling more all over the world and stuff like that. Sean Paul was still doing his thing with Jeremy Hardin. So when VP did not take the Street Sweeper beat, the compilation, and I asked Greensleeve to take the compilation. So Greensleeves took the compilation, and I asked them to sign Sean Paul. And Chris Cracknell didn't like how Sean Paul sound. Didn't think he was going to be a big star. So Greensleeve passed upon Sean Paul initially. Passed on Sean Paul. So when Sean Paul got his contract from VP, I basically begged him. I said, yo, make sure I lie. I look at the contract and them thing there, you know. And I said to him, yo, don't make VP collect the songs them from the producers them. You go collect the songs them from the producers them. You understand? So maybe it's a good thing the Greensleeve thing never work out. The same way I asked them to sign Cecile. Greensleeve, I was like, yo, you have a girl, she got boss, you know. So I recorded a song with Cecile, the Macy Gray song. You know? I tried to say goodbye and I choke. I tried to walk away and I stumble. Because I was in England when the song around the place. So I come back to Jamaica and say, yo, me a boss here, you know.
So I recorded the song and I went to England. I played the song for Greensleeve, Chris Cracknell, and the man said, ha, 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 ha. Vegas, you must be sleeping with this one, mate. Years after him signed Cecile, he have to pay more. He might have signed our publishing and sign all kind of things with that, but he have to pay more for me sign now. I meant to tell him he wouldn't have to pay so much. Same way I begged him to sign Sean Paul. Sean Paul can be the biggest thing, but it happened for the right reason because I worked with them and they didn't have the power in America like they had in England. Mm-hmm. VP was more powerful in America. So that was a choice that I made, and I was willing to take that risk of not blowing up bigger in America, because if I had went with VP, then I would have been bigger in America because them that focus more upon the radio stations them here in America. Yeah. So I was basically doing more promotion and stuff like that in England where Greensleeve was based. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why I went into the British charts, top 20.
Because Greensleeve's power base is in the UK. So then anything UK, Europe, Africa, anything on that side there, Greensleeve will get you into. If you're talking about North America now, North America and Caribbean.
VP. So maybe maybe it was not a wise business move. Maybe I would have made more money. Maybe I would have been more popular. We don't know. Mm-hmm. Anything could have happened. Or maybe I could have been stuck in a contract.
That's a crazy thing. You never know. You just know what did happen. You never know what might have happened.
Facts.
All right, good. You record your album, you're touring, and you're doing. Why do you think somebody like you broke into the international market? What was it about your sound, your style, your music? What do you think it was about you that had that appeal?
Clarity and melodies. And it's just I discovered that people like to sing along mm-hmm. to whatever they can from a composition. So I was trying to make the songs, something in the song that you can remember, something in the song that you can sing along to, something in the song that you're gonna find yourself singing, and you don't know where you get that melody from. Yeah, so that was what I discovered. So when my songs plays play in the clubs, if you pull the needle down, heads high, you kill them with yeah, chilla la 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 la, yeah, boom boom chilla, So it's always something. I always try to, implement something in the composition that people will. It's not all the time, because sometimes the beat is not giving you that. It's like, I am blessed. I just know that people are gonna sing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm soon ready to get to there. I'm not ready for I Am Blessed, but we're getting there just now, though. All right. So you're doing your stuff. Everything is good. At what point in your career did you and Sean Paul's relationship get kind of strained?
This happened. This started with Steely and Steely from Steely and Clevie, mm-hmm. because Hot Girl Today. VP did not have any control over the song, and they signed Sean Paul and they wanted a single. Mm-hmm. So because they didn't have any control over the song, because they didn't take the compilation from Steely and Clevie, so Greensleeve had owned the master for that song. So Steely called me and said he wanted me to sing over the song on the Punani rhythm. So I said to him, if I'm going to do it, you have to give it to me for my album, because I'm working on my second album now and I start learning the business now. Mm-hmm. So I'm basically sticking up one of the biggest producers where you can't really give Steely them type of thought there. So I take a chance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm say, big man, if I go do it still, I go want it for my album, and I'm say, yeah, man, everything good. But I did not know when I, did the song over, I changed the master to a new master. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I recorded the song and they sent it off to VP, I guess, to be Sean Paul's singer. So one day I was in the airport and Sean Paul came. I think we were going to Panama. We had a show in Panama, me and Sean Paul. Mm-hmm. So he showed me the 12-inch. And when I looked at it, it says, Hot Girl Today, Sean Paul. So I said, where's my name? And he grabbed it back from me and said, yo, Blow Star. So I was like, I don't understand why them left me off of the record. Mm-hmm. So I said, my voice still up on it. Him say, yeah. Mm-hmm. So when I came back from Panama, I went, I remember going to New York and I called Christian from VP. And I said, yo, I'm not giving any permission to release my vocals. Because prior to that, and prior to them signing Sean Paul, if I can piggyback a little bit, they pressed up an album, a Heads Eye album to release with Vegas, VP. I was doing some work with Tony Kelly, and the next thing I knew, that an album is coming out with Vegas. And I had no dealings with VP nor Tony Kelly about this album. So this brand new album is coming out next week. And I have no deal. I don't know where this album come from. And I don't know anything about the dealings or nothing. So I told them I was going to sue them if they release the album. And they, kind of yelled me, Christy Bob, everybody tried to talk me out of it. And I'm like, yo, I already have an album, Heads Eye, that Green Steve just put out. It's doing very well. And of course, Chris Cracknell called me and think me involved with the VP project. And I go against them after them done give me an advance to put out my album. So I was like, I don't know nothing about it. So I go strain the relationship now with Green Sleeves if I go with the VP project. Mm-hmm. So I basically go for loyalty then. So you know what, I can't release it. Because I could have negotiated and said, give me 100,000 and release it. Because that is better than the 200,000 where them have got destroyed because they already shipped 200,000 records. And the record just entered the Billboard charts. So I went with loyalty. I was like, yo, no, I can't release it. Mm-hmm. And they yelled me and like them can. And I was like, no, you can't. So I get a lawyer. So I went with loyalty with Green Sleeves. Years after, of course, Green Sleeves, them sure say, you have to look for yourself, look after yourself in a business. Because they ended up selling the company to VP. Mm-hmm. So I was a fool.
So it's like you ended up exactly where you didn't want to be in the first place. You ended up.
The same man who used to call me every morning, and the man who begged me to, Chris Cracknell, who begged me not to put out the album. I was like, I don't know anything about it. And he said, I have to do everything. The man promised to pay a lawyer for me. Mm-hmm. A few years after, when things start slowing down, artists go through different lull. I couldn't get him on the phone. He wouldn't even take my calls. Yeah. And then I look at pick up back and you get him on the phone again. So I started learning the business. I realized, yo, it's a business. Mm-hmm. I didn't, and I remember Robert Livingston said to me one time, when me and Sean Paul was going over the whole thing. Robert Livingston said, if you had a good manager, that situation could have been fixed. So if I had a good manager, that situation with VP, when they pressed up that album, maybe that was something that would have propelled me into a better situation. Anyway, I think some form of vibe was carrying from there. So, yeah. So when the Hot Girl Today record, when I did it now, when I re-recorded the song, and VP put it out, they took off my name. So I called Christian and said, but you can't use my vocal. You take off my name, but you can't use my vocal. When I use Sean Paul part alone, as a matter of fact, I and him write it. So what am I going to do? So I say, all right. If we're not going to release it, I want it for my album to them, so them can't give me it. So that's how the problem start. So I say, when I put out something without my permission, and I can't give it to me for my album, I want to take off my name off of it. So Sean Paul linked me and said, I'm going to do the music video. Mm-hmm. I'm going to link me. See? So I say, all right, but we do it. Because now, of course, they must have put my name if them do the video with me. Even though my name not depend. Remember say I'm me and the man, remember say I'm me carry the man to steal, And me wait the day for Steely record the song, you know. With me and him. Me and him do the video together at Jamaica, everything, you know. So to see my name not on the record now when them are ready to push the record international, you know, it kind of messed up. See, that time Vibes magazine done rate the original as top 50 best combination of all time. I don't remember if it was reggae combination of all time or hip hop, you know, whatever genre. See, let me correct that. So I called Christian and I was like, yo, you can't release it if you're not giving me for my album. He said, can't give it to me. Not give it to me. So them do the video. Sean Paul promised him I go call me. I don't hear from Sean Paul. I call him and somebody cut off the phone. So the phone went dead when I call back, the phone dead. So I realized I get punked. So I start rebel. So that was one of the first time I rebel in the music and people burn me out feet. So I'm a bad mind. Because me get taken off of a record with me and somebody bill, and me the people them chastised. So I think based on the type of person that I am, I think I pay the price in being a good business person, a person where I try have something out of music. Like, you know, what am I going to show at the end of the day? Yeah? You know, I already was loyal to Green Steve and them dumped me. Dump off the wall of my catalog over to VP. Yeah? Same people them. So that was what caused the vibe with and something happened during that time. And I wish I did I had handled it better. When I remember one night we were quarreling about the situation at I think we were at Pegasus Hilton Hotel. And Jeremy Hardin was there. And Jeremy Hardin, I don't remember what he said. And I told him about his mother. Yeah. He said something about, we don't need Vegas on the record. Can take him off or something like that. But I was real upset of the whole situation. And I think, I don't remember if I told him about his mother or I called him a P word or something. That was not good. Because the man, they wait for me for really, no matter the circumstances, that man, they really make somebody make the world know. That is something I regret. One of the things I regret in my life. The night when I said that to Jeremy Hardin. I think that's further strained the relationship with. But I did see it as he was a part of the sellout, where my name not on the record with me and Sean Paul do a theme studio, we write the record together. You know, he was there the night when me and Sean Paul work on the record together. So I feel kind of betrayed. You see what I say? And then for hear him say, no, say, but we don't need Vegas on the record. Or something to the sort. That it kind of hurt me away. So I disrespect him. But no matter what him did say or him did do, I can't extenuate. Right? I can't extenuate, excuse me. You know, why would I say that to him tonight? Because I have to remember, say, yo, if I never Jeremy had him, I sing Nike here. You see what I say? Yeah.
It's wild what happened, what really happens behind the scenes, and then you just see somebody say something up front, and then you don't know what the whole buildup was in the back end in the first place for you even to get to this public display here. All we see is this going on here, but we don't know what happened back there. Because even with you and Sean Paul had the riff then. So then how did you guys come back together to do the Here Comes the Boom with DMX it was in Belly, right?
That was done before.
It was done before.
That was done before the fallout. We did Here Comes the Boom after Hot Girl Today. We did that. Tony Kelly set that up. Tony Kelly set that up with Hype Williams and for it to be a part of the soundtrack. So Tony Kelly called us and said he had something to do for with DMX. So we ran to the studio and, you know, he had everything, you know, ready to go. So DMX just walk in and just, you know, that's how close me and Sean Paul really was still. And everything could have been dealt with differently. As I said before, Robert Livingston said something key to me. He said if I had a manager at that time that played a role in the whole thing that was going on, it could have been handled differently, you understand? But of course, everybody did. I learned them time there with a group and testosterone a boil, and you know, so of course, now we get older and I realize that things could have been dealt with differently. What just trust, it just imagine how you feel when you wake up in the morning, you put on BT, and you see, you hear your voice, but when you look, you see some girls that mimic you in a video, and your name now come up on the thing, so, and you know, say you're part of the project. I'm like, yo, when they really feel like them betray me still.
So it was just because the paperwork couldn't get straight is why you couldn't get involved with that record there?
No. I think VP did not want Sean Paul and Vegas to be just the same way like how when we were performing at Sting and I wanted to like perform by myself. It was a business move. And it was a good business move. But as me I said, we grew up now and we understand because we understand it from a business point of view. You see what I said? And I think if Sean had reached out to me and said, yo, this is the situation, they're going to drop my project if me include you, you know. Me just say, go and go eat your food, brother. So you can always come back and record a song with me. So I mean, say if somebody, if we deal with the thing more, we didn't need somebody to sit with down during that time there. We as the artists, because I know some that feel bad to if me they do the same thing to him. If Greensleeve had put out the record and take off Sean Paul's name and put it out as just Vegas alone, Sean Paul that feel bad too. And then shoot the video without Sean Paul. After we pay with money at Jamaica and make our own video ourselves and we promote the record together, we go on tour together. Then me know some that feel away too. But me more emotional, I guess. Yeah, my personality kind of different still. If you betray me, I think I'm not really hold back anything. Which is something maybe me need to work on still.
You see, the thing with you, Vegas, is this. You seem, clearly you're intelligent, all right? But it's sometimes your emotion seems to get the best of you sometimes. That's why if a lot of people don't realize who Vegas is, you almost come across as a troll, especially on social media from time to time. You understand? Even though sometimes, to tell you the truth, I think that's even a calculated move on your part, to tell you the truth. Where you want to be the bad guy. You know what I mean? Here I am. I'm the bad guy. It almost feels like that, but from time to time. Is that yes, no, maybe in between?
It is mostly yes. I'm going to tell you why. I am an entertainer, right? I'm always promoting myself. You know, it doesn't matter what anyone says. Steely said to me one time, out of sight, out of mind. No matter how much hit songs you have, if people don't see you, then forget about you. Until them hear your song play. They might say, the artist there. Because if you check the era that I broke, and all the other artists that is from that era, it's me alone people, you know, talk about the amount of times when they talk about the era there. I guess, not to toot my own horn. But that is a strategic. And I encourage other artists like Degree and them youth, them I see Degree, them I say, yo, if make on presence, you know, people sooner. Make on presence available, make on self available on social media. It's called social media. It's a different era we're in. Make people sooner and, you know, do some live and play on the music that people can sooner. So the same thing to Nadine Sutherland. You know, that people remember and now them can put a face to the music. Yeah. The other part is, I think, being the bad guy, where everybody want to kill another movie, everybody in the movie want the bad guy dead. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that because it basically is a fuel. You see me I say? When we know say, yo, I have to work harder. If everybody like Vegas maybe not work as hard as him should work. You see me I say? If everybody like Vegas, me not go think, say, yo, I'm trading stocks. I need to make $2 million that year, yeah. So I can have things, so I can say, yo, this is when me day in a life, you know, so uno way attack, or uno way burn me out, which part uno day in a life. At the end of the day, am I taking care of my children? You know, are my children gonna, you know, be able to go to university and have a better life when me never have a grow up in a board house and no television and kerosene oil lamp and outside kitchen where I'm running to go bathe in the rain and running at my mother with a pot of porridge and got third-degree burns, right? Burn up the whole of your hand. So is that life I want for my kids? No. I want to be able to leave a legacy for my kids, whether monetary or whatever. You understand? So them now have to get kicked out of nobody's house, like how I used to be kicked out of people's house. Or people say them no want nobody at them house. Them now have to ask somebody for bread. So it actually is something that motivates me when, you know, especially if I know that people will glorify rapists and murderers. But if I say something, they will more chastise me. But the same people them will glorify rapists, murderers, and drug dealers. You understand? And pedophiles. The same people them who were born out Vegas, them support pedophiles openly. So that means that all me have to do is work hard and achieve my goals. Them finish school. I've never graduated from any form of school.
Okay.
I left Kubali before I got the opportunity to graduate. I left Unity Primary before, you know, I reached the graduation stage. I left Alman in all age before I reached the graduation stage. So I had to put up myself in school. You understand? And I'm doing a great job of re-educating myself. You see? So at least I can graduate and show my children, like, yo, your daddy do it at this age, you don't have no excuse.
That's interesting because especially having this conversation with you now, I really have a better insight of how Mr. Vegas thinks. You understand? Because if you see a little half-hour rant to Vegas, you're just hearing the rant. You don't really understand what's in this man's mind, why he's acting like this. But me getting a better picture of you, as I said, I understand the movements now. I 100% get it right now. All right? Because somebody like you, again, you brought up another name, because if it's not one thing, it's the next for you, Mr. Vegas. All right?
Right.
Bounty killer. All right. How did that whole situation come up? Because as you said, he called you, you went to go check him, go listen to a song in the car and stuff. How did it get from there to where you guys got to?
Still asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from. I have an idea that it started over Sting, where I was actually bigging him up, and somebody from him circles came on stage and said I was dissing him. But if you look back, if you listen back to the Sting show, I was actually bigging him up.
Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time. I just big up somebody else the other day, and when I look, I see a video out there with the person that chastised me, I try get a buzz from it. The dichotomy is, I can do an interview and speak about my music, and you will be able to identify, or you can see the picture.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a good interview from me without calling even the artist that you just mentioned name.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you the history of Mr. Vegas, where I'm coming from, and I can show you where I have entered the Billboard charts, the real Billboard charts, over 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
I recorded songs with Black Eyed Peas, Beyonce, you know, DMX.
We're going to talk about that Beyonce just now, but continue.
Right. So you have to understand that it's just the way the business is, I guess. But some things are just, some things I don't have any answers for. But as I said before, the dichotomy would be and other artists that you interview, they have to basically call another artist's name in a negative way for it to go viral, or for the interview, for somebody to watch the interview. I don't want people to just watch the interview because I called somebody's name, or is another mix-up, or is another gossip, or Wayne Seno, and you understand? I can do that on my page. Yes, so I say, We can do that on my Instagram. But one thing I encourage artists to do though, we have big people now. And if you have a problem with me, maybe me not even know you have a problem with me, you know. I'm one of the easiest person. Me give out my number for my live them. Reach out. We are like big people now. Me and Sean Paul, we talk all the time. We understand now, say, yo, VP is a business, Green Sea was a business. We just get caught up in the middle of a business. And we never know if we just make it, the business flow and just eat the food. You understand? So, many of the artists them that you see out there calling up other artists' name, they have never reached out. Just reach out. If you have a problem, reach out. It's like a man tell me, say, a man been going around saying him right heads high. And that man never called my phone yet and tell me that. Never. And I'm like, but at least, if I me have the problem with, because if me and you write a song, bro, I'm going to like register my share of the publishing. Or I'm going to call you and be like, yo, what to my share? It's like when I recorded Hot Walk. When I was recording Hot Walk, I was in the studio and two producer youth, I don't remember the youth them name. But I remember them in the studio and I was singing something and they said, no man, try this. And they gave me 2 lines, I think. When we did the original split on Hot Walk, it was just me and Murray. The youth them reached out to me, I think years after, or months after, and they were like, yo, artists, you know, say, we should have get something out of the publishing. I'm say, oh, I'm telling them, man, when did we? And them tell me and remind me, I'm say, yeah, man, what I mean? Murray, this, I'll take less of the publishing. And them name, if you look at Hot Walk now, you see them name. I never say, yo, go away from your son, come off my phone and Ray. Them could have go around and tell people, say them write Hot Walk. You understand? Me and Richie Loop wrote a song for me, Hardwell. Hardwell is like the #1 EDM DJ at the time. Named Badam. Richie Loop wrote the song. And Hardwell linked me to sing the song. Right? When they did the publishing split, Richie Loop felt like he should have gotten more publishing. And I was getting too much publishing. He never go around and go say, yo, and me write the song and them give Vegas too much and the boy thief me publishing and Ray. He reach out to me and say, singer, you know some things that I should have get look more publishing than Mr. Singer, I want to man. How much more you want? It's done. One time, broke it down. Yeah? If we can go there, so. Suko first produced Broke It Down, build the rhythm for Broke It Down. I didn't like it. I went to Titimos. I said, I want something more melodic. I want a beat where people can dance and I want people can identify the beat. Titimos built me a beat and I said, no man, that's how I go on now. I don't want that, man. I want to change the sound. I don't want to do like what Steven them do. It sounded like a Stephen McGregor rhythm. I said, I want something where the girls them can dance to. He built the beat, recorded, broke it down. I picked up the star one day, saw Titimos burning me out. What Titimos have burned me out now for? My thief in publishing. I my thief in rap. I say, style me up the wickedest of ways. People start side with him and I burn me out too. Guess what? His share was sitting there because I did not claim his share. Look at the record right now. Going on the internet right now, type in, broke it down. You see my name and film name. Done. I just tweet him, bro. You burn me out, bro, for what? I style me up. My youth, you know, so your share sitting there. And you, if you do your work and know, so you link up your publisher and sign up your share, bro. Because I thought he knew the business. He's a man who had done music before me. I don't hear nothing after that. it never have to reach the star, don't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just the same way, I take up my phone and call and say, Titi must more you build a beat for me. Take up your phone and call me and say, what to my share? If you would think so you write a line or you give me a line in a head side. Take up the phone and call me, don't? Ain't it so?
Makes sense.
And if me can justify, I say, yeah man, I you to get a line there for you. Even if you just in the studio, me da give you a little 5%. Same thing with Pull Up.
Mm-hmm.
Pull Up went Pitbull actually, because people don't even know that is my record actually broke Pitbull.
No idea.
Pitbull was basically struggling. Little John, everybody trying with him. TVT, everybody trying with Pitbull. I bought a cut of the Coolie Dance rhythm from Scatter because everybody said that you have some artists, I won't call any names because we don't want that be the reason why people watch this. Some artists said them now go up on a rhythm with me depend.
Mm-hmm.
So them blacklist me. So I'm blacklisted by VP Records based on the situation with Sean Paul. And I'm blacklisted in Jamaica from off of the big beat them, the big producers them beat. So the man them say, them not record pan a rhythm with me. So me go up on Duale rhythm. When them go up a Lenky, when them go record Lenky now take off my song. So my song not come out on Duale. Coolie Dance rhythm, them no want me pan the rhythm. Right? Many other rhythms. Firelinks rhythm, them say no want me pan the rhythm. One of the artists I mean I'm Melody. So Firelinks them can't put out my song. Right? This artist singing at everybody melody and say me in a melody. Right? Anyway. I say, all right, that not gonna stop me. Because obstacles, me say you just have to work harder to get over them. And the victory I go sweeter when you get over. Because them gonna jump over it fast and never realize that they must make better use of what them gain. But through me work so hard to get over the obstacles them. Me reverence when me achieve. See? So I bought a cut of the rhythm from Scatter. And I recorded Pull Up. See? So when I was in the studio, this little youth in the studio, we can sing. A youth named Wayne Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I said, sing this. The vibe is right. Ladies getting wild on the dance floor. See? So we're in the studio. And this singer Wayne Anthony in the studio. So I said, yo, I want something else on the song. Because I really record the song and everything, sir. Because the black key and the drop top with the girl at we have to pull up and one front and right? So I said, me need to sing something on the beat. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So me and him and Zeke in the studio and somehow the melody come up and him get on the song. I give the man a piece of the publishing. Years after, bro. Like over 10 years. I saw Tony Kelly. Yo. We and Antonio burn you out, you know. I said, for what? Man, see a rob him star. I said, me? Rob him? Yeah, man, the man say, you know, give him nothing for the song be. I said, what you talk about Tony? Time Tony start working with him. Mm-hmm. I said, Tony, go play your computer. Who for name that? The man publishing is sitting there, bro. Imagine the man publishing is there. On a song we got Billboard. You know how much money that, bro? I don't hear about nothing. So all the go around and slaughter me. You have never reached out to me. You reach out to me for everything else. You know if you find me, I'm one of the most accessible person. You have not reached out to me. You see what I say? Sometimes a man in the studio or something you did I write a song and a man just give me, I can be here writing a song now, you know. And I say something, I say, no, me not like that part there. Mm-hmm. We're not try it that way here. You may come 10 years and say, yo, and me help write that song there, you know. And the boy, you know, give me no publishing, the boy rob me, you know. Maybe if he just pick up the phone and say, bro, you know, say, Remember that line though, me put in the tune, I feel like you should have give me something, you know. I say, what you mean, me done, man? That one line, they make it hit, you know. See a 5%, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, bro? And me, I tell you, these things happen all the time. Where people, we don't practice how to communicate with each other, bro. We rather we rather get an interview and slaughter each other.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just reaching out. Just like how the youth them reach out to me on Hot Work. Yo, singer, Ray. Just like how Richie Loop reach out to me. But couldn't in my right mind go know say the man write the song. And me have less to do with with composing the song. And me go tell the man say, come off my phone, man, I want to hear. Me give the man what him say want, bro, because you must value the man value him work, bro. The man value him work and know him worth.
Mm-hmm.
So if me can't give you all of what you say I want, I know so me say, all right, here we go, I meet you halfway. Or 3/4 way. And we good. You see? Simple as that.
Okay, so it goes back to what I was saying in the first place, where because you're the bad guy and the troll, it could be a situation where he feels like, okay, the bad guy, the troll, is not approachable. He's going to do bad stuff. 9 other people said he's a bad guy, so I'm going to be the 10th and just he's a bad guy. And then the Mr. Vegas hate train is moving at full steam right there.
People used to be afraid of Steely.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I wanted a hit song.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to approach him.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking business, bro. You understand? No matter how hostile a person is, or you think a person is,
mm-hmm.
or you hear a person is, if you have not had that experience, you're only assuming or you're going off of someone else's account. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So I think me being on social media, socializing, we used to do that on the corner every day. It's just that we have internet now, don't it? And we come on the social media live and we talk. The same things that I speak about on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
We used to talk about them things in a studio yard and we still do when we come together as brethren and them thing there. It's just that now we have a wider audience. So just like when me that come and say something about Minister Hall, we already say the same thing if we're in a studio yard too. Among ourselves in the studio yard, we just have more people now involved in the reasoning. So it's not even like troll, because 90% of the something we may talk say is not even a joke if you look into it, because I'm always manifest.
Let's go through this last issue before we get into your songs and get you out here, okay? What, in theory, has us sitting here right now today was the Hawkeye interview I did. We're just going to call it plain and straight.
I called you out on that interview.
I know that. I seen that live. Somebody tagged me, and I actually feel justified in doing so. Because
I like the way how you challenged me just now, mm-hmm. on the Sister Hall's situation, mm-hmm. and you actually asked me to explain myself. Mm-hmm. I think. And because I watched your program and I realized that you're an intelligent person.
Thank you.
I think you can pick up and call people out on bulls, mm-hmm. so on BS. Yeah. So when I was watching the interview, I was like, why wouldn't he ask him to explain some things that he was saying, mm-hmm. in the interview? And the reason why I addressed it, because I've never walked around and speak about anything that I've done for anyone. So okay. People were always saying that I did nothing for anyone. However, this situation is different. Why is it different? Because this person that you interviewed, the person that he's speaking bad about, That man passed off. But that man is one of the most honest person that you could ever find in this music business. And Richie Stephens can testify to that, bro. That man taught us how to make money, how to save, how to make use of whatever we earn, bro. That man distributed the records for Don Corleone, all the great producers in Jamaica. No one has ever said, and they can all testify to this, bro, Byron Murray. No one in the industry can ever say, or will ever say, outside of that person that you interviewed, that that man was dishonest, bro. He did a little drinking, and you know, sometimes some people drink and they may say things, but it's not going to be, or it was never about hurting you or being dishonest to you, bro. For someone to say that man did not want people to book him if they were not booking Vegas is one of the most hurtful thing I ever heard someone said about another person, not even about me, about another person that helped them in their journey.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay, so then this is the question. Why do you think he would feel like that then?
Who, Murray?
No, Hawkeye.
This person? Because let me get to that in a minute.
Okay.
This person said to you in an interview, I was the one who was taking him into the pop market. Am I right?
1,000%.
But in the same interview, the person said, Murray did not want me to take him where I was going. He said the same artists, they don't want to take you when they're going on the road. But now that he got the break, the manager want him to take me on the road. But he just said to you prior to that, I was the one who was taking him on the road. So why now he's going to say I did not take him on the road? In the same interview, in the same...
It wasn't taken on the road. It was, you took him on the road, yes, but then there was some issues with after you guys were on the road.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is it doesn't make any sense for someone to say, when we were going on the road, we did not take him. But the same person said to you, I was the one who took him on the road. It's like, what's the real, what did I take him or did I not take him? You know what I'm saying? That was what I had a problem with. Because if I say to you, oh, you used to feed me, but then I say, oh, but when I'm eating, I don't give you food. Then I just said, you know what I'm saying? Now, on the part that you're talking about, something happened on the road. What happened was, Murray did a double bookings. He booked for an overseas promoter, and he booked a show in the country. When he realized that he did a double bookings with me, he promised the promoter in the country that he will send the whole camp to fill the void. Because Vegas has a show in America that he didn't realize that Violet booked another show, because Violet was the agent. So to let the promoter, feel at ease and continue and keep, still hold on to the show, he gave the promoter the whole crew, except Vegas, including the same artist that you're talking about. So they went to the country, and the people them realized Vegas was not coming, and the people them started rushing them and wanted to beat them up. So they came back to Kingston, and I was in the office. I had nothing to do with the double bookings, bro. I'm just the artist. So the guy is going to say to Murray and everyone in the studio in front of me, Alazid, all the artists in the studio, Murray, me no want you book no more show with me and no money, no. Now he says he was making a joke. But that was the argument. So I said, all right. You reach now where you want to reach in life. So, all right, Maury, no more show with me and him. That is how the story went. The man said him no want Maury book because me never go country, but me not have nothing to do with it, bro. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the one who booked the shows. So when he said that, I said, listen to me, you think you reach. As long as you live, you will never get to where I'm at. And I said, Maury, you know what, as a matter of fact, me now go Trinidad with him. Because you have a little one song I play now and you think you reach. So you got to tell Maury, hey Maury, me know why you book no more show with me and a man, you know. Because me no go country. But me never have nothing to do with it, bro. So I say, fine. You reach. You don't need me again to carry up on the road. So do it your way. So now that them reach a point in life where them look back and realize that them not reach nowhere in a life. And I am still working hard. Them a try and look somebody for blame for them downfall. But let me ask you a question. This was in the early 2000s, 99, 2000 down there, so. If we were the problem, or we were the reasons why you did not get anywhere in life, what happened when you left? You went and recorded on the biggest dancehall rhythm of all time. You were on the Duali rhythm. When I had nothing to do with you. When Maury had nothing to do with you. You were on the biggest rhythm of all time and your song was in rotation everywhere. This is your biggest song. Am I lying?
Truth.
Your biggest song, you found that song when you had nothing to do with me and Maury. How comes you did not make something out of life with your biggest? Who are you going to blame for that? Who did not want to do any shows with you? Who told promoter then that if I am not on the show, they can't book you? Because we were out the picture, bro. Do the maths, bro. You recorded your biggest song that anyone in the world will know you. They're going to know you for that song on the Duali rhythm. Because that is the biggest dancehall rhythm of all time. What happened? Let me tell you what happened, bro.
Talk to me.
Some people just born workless. And when them realize that they mess up whatever them could, or them dreams, or whatever them could achieve in a life, them have to find somebody to blame because them shame to tell you, say, they didn't do a good job of taking care of them affairs. Zoom J song on the rhythm was not as big as this artist that come tell you about Maury. Send a book no show if me not upon it. And Zoom J is doing very well. And Zoom J don't have half the songs or a quarter of the songs that this artist has. Do the maths, bro.
So again, why Mr. Vegas then? Why you in particular? If there's so many other, no, I'm lying, wrong. You know what? Take that back again. Why Finger? Why would you took offense to this whole situation? Not because your name had been called in it, because it was Murray's name is the situation. And I guess he's not here to defend himself. So you figured I'll be the defender of Murray?
That's why I called out this person that no one remembers. Mm-hmm. Because I'm actually doing this person a favor by calling out this person. Mm-hmm. Of course. Because you know what Maury did for me? He basically taught me how to be a man. how to take care of my responsibilities, bro. How to eat my food. How to stay ahead. How to be on top. How to climb over the obstacles, bro. When people said Vegas was done, nothing not going for me, he believed not only in me, bro. He believed in this person, bro. So for him to be in the earth, dead and gone, not here to defend himself, why wouldn't I take offense to someone who I'm sure did not confront Murray on these allegations when he was alive? That man is a good person, bro. He had a drinking problem in the end. Every one of us have some struggles in life. That is hurtful because that man went through hell with promoters just to let them take the package with an extra artist, bro. That man begged me, begged Violet to take this man on the road, bro. Because he respected the brother.
Mm-hmm.
He loved the brother, bro. I know that, bro. The man called me hours a night. Yo, such and such a big artist, you know. He might go run the place, you know. Say, more, come off my phone, me asleep, bro. Ask Richard Stevens. You don't have to take it from me, bro. But you ask the question, why Vegas? Because, of course, the venom is strong. It's toxic. So, of course, if you want to catch a forward, you want the haters them to jump by your side, just find something to say about Vegas. What them not try? Them say me molest Pitney. Right? Them say me a this. Them say me a drugs man. They say me a sell drugs. They say me a crackhead. Them where's them I say? But at the end of the day, bro, did I come here and waste my time on the earth? Yeah, that won't be the story. You see that?
This is how I see it, Vegas. I just hope that at the end of the day, everybody could just live and let live, because this is how I know things to go. It's the race is not over until it's over. Until you take that last breath, it's not over. But in the meantime, there's a lot of hurdles and stuff you have to climb over. But I just wish that a situation again. He did say you were the big artist in the camp, so then clearly the respect is there. It's just whatever else happened with a co-worker where we're not inside of the workplace to know what's going on. It's just something like that, I guess, should have been fixed up, whatever it was.
I understand all of that. And as I said prior, some things can be dealt with by just a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a problem with somebody, address the person first before you even go deal with it. You know, say even the artists when me and him have the biggest fallout in a dancehall music. I reach out to that artist off the ear many times, you know. Off the ear, sorry. Many times. Ask Drummy from Rough Cut. Yeah. Always try reach out to a brother and see if you can settle the score before it get to the point there.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? That will never happen. You know why? Because there's an audience for it. There's an audience for it, and the audience crave it.
You of all people understand that. You know what I mean? That's you're the bad guy. You understand it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things there where I respect you for your talent. I respect him for his talent too. You guys are two different artists doing two wicked things. It's just, again, I just wish you didn't think here. Because even if you watch the interview, after what was said, it's like, okay, get it off your chest and let's move on. You were not part of that interview at all, you know. You were not in my notes at all. That's
when you're writing an essay or any form of paper in school, there has to be a grabber.
For sure.
If the grabber for your interview is that, I think that is what we're going to pick up on. If the grabber in this interview is whatever you cut, you're going to cut something that you think is the grabber. Because at the end,
several parts, brother.
All right. So the grabber is basically is what we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't. Once you're gonna start out by saying somebody stopped your career,
mm-hmm.
that's the grabber, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Why you don't have anything in life? Why you're where you're at today? Why we don't hear anything about you? That is the grabber. Because Vega stopped me. And why it is a grabber? Because of course the audience is there to agree that Vega stopped this person, even though, and I say it again, I was not even in the picture. There was no more in the street with Mr. Vegas when this person found the biggest song of his career. What stopped you there? And you, the person that is interviewing this person, you know that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was not in the picture. And this person found one of the biggest song of his career. Afterwards, so why didn't, if you did not get the opportunity when I was in the picture? Because I blocked you. No, you have the biggest song of your career. Why not prove to yourself and go for your dreams now? Like, oh, that person try to stop me. Now I find a big tune. Me I go work. Me I go save my money. Me I go get a house. Me I go this. Me I go that. Me I go promote myself. Nobody can tell me now, say Vegas now come, them now book this, that, blah, blah. What happened there?
That's a whole another debate. We could go into management and all that, but I think you said your piece. You came across saying what you said. His piece was said. Now we could move on.
There's always three sides to a story.
Of course there is.
Your side, my side, and the truth.
There's actually four.
I want to know the third side. You see the third side? It says this person found the biggest song of his career. He was on a beat that I was blacklisted off. I never even did on the beat, bro. You had an opportunity that I did not get. I was hiding behind Lenky Wall, the producer for the beat, stepping in dog doo-doo, going in my car, stinking up my car, just to get on the beat. And you were on the beat, bro. You ever hear me come and said, because Lenky never recorded me, I not reach nowhere, bro. I found another beat. You ever hear me come tell people, say, because somebody did call me name and I try to hold me down in the music and try to put stigma upon my name why I not reach anywhere? Me talk about it, but you not go hear me say, that's why I not reach nowhere, because I reach somewhere. I am blessed. Every day.
Good segue. Great segue. Excellent segue. You should actually be in my chair and I should be in yours. Excellent segue. I am blessed. All right. How did that monster song come up in the first place? And I know this came up right around the time when you wanted to retire.
I was on tour. And one of the dancers, you know, them time I used to pray before we go on stage and them thing there. So when the dancer started singing that church hymn, I am blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, which song that? She said, no, song there. I said, no. Sing it again. So I said, that sounds nice, man. I went back to my hotel room and I wrote the song. Basically, it just sat with me for a minute, bro. And I started reflecting on what I've gone through and what I've been through in the music industry. And I looked and said, you know what? Me day up on tour. Me bless. No matter the amount of fight, me bless. Look how much things them say about me. Me bless. Me live somewhere. Me earn substantially. Me bless. So me start writing. Me say me praise God straight. Make money straight. Bonita straight. Want bad mind straight. God knows me straight. My love woman straight. My father him straight. That's why my band straight. Enough of them I try stop me fly past them straight. The next part me say, Jah bless me up straight. Him watch over me straight. So when the wicked rise judgment for them straight. Look how much hairs straight. Me a tour straight. When them sit on a yard. Because that's true.
And then that song just turned into a super monster. I would say that's probably in your top 5. Top 2.
Listen what it say. This have to play straight. Live up your rhythm straight. It have to play straight.
What song would you put over that? Your breakout song?
No song. That's my number one. That is my favorite Mr. Vega song. Even when I'm old and gray. Because it's a reality. So it go back to the point where the obstacles them couldn't stop me. The victory, the sweet when I climb over. I face it every day because of course we're up on the internet and we see and we can read. And you see people say hurtful stuff like, why God not just kill him? Or one day they're going to find him now gully and him. I'm like, people so hateful. But guess what? He made me work harder. Because I know say, it's like LeBron James that play harder because I know say the critics them. Narrate him. So every night him want to score 50. Them things that used to fuel Michael Jordan and them things that fuel you as an athlete, as a celebrity, whatever. If you have everybody will love you and just a hands up, and every time you tell them hands up. No man, you have to find yourself. You have to go through the fire, bro. Because when you go through fire, you come out pure. If everybody just like me, I go get comfortable. And that has been the situation for years. So when they blacklist me, I find someone will whitelist me.
Yeah.
Like Europe, where white people love me.
It's chess, not checkers, big boss. You understand?
Big league.
You understand. I got 2 more questions for you before we get out of here, because this conversation, Vegas, has been freaking epic, boss. You know what I mean? You sat down and you explained stuff and you got stuff off your chest that I haven't really heard you speak about in depth, either ever or in a really long time.
It's a long history, brother. It's a book.
Yeah. It's several books, brother.
Several books.
Several. All right. You brought it up earlier. The Standing in the Sun remix with Beyonce. All right. How did that happen? This man that used to live in a board house had to run away, take money from his mom, and all of this stuff here, ended up doing a song with one of the world's biggest artists, Beyonce. How did that happen?
When Broke It Down went into the Billboard charts, it was the number 1 song on Power and Power 105 and Hot 97 in New York. It just started to play in other markets. So they wanted someone to do a remix of Standing on the Sun. So Danny C, who worked with Pitbull, he did some promotion for me at one time. So he was about to work the Broke It Down record. And he said, Vegas. And Beyonce, of course, Heads Eye, and they played Broke It Down for her. So right then she said, I want him on the record. So when I got the contract, I said, I need to work with the best of the best in the business. Musicians, not samplers, musicians. So I went to Clevie and Danny Brownie to make the beat. And she loved the beat, but I was doing something where I didn't want to go too hard. And she sent back a message and said, no. I want Vegas. Yeah. And I redid it and she loved it. So now the song is set to release or get on the album. And someone leaked the song. Someone it just it doesn't mile up, bro. It's like it happens so many times, bro. It's like, yo, when it's gonna be a change. I think it's gonna change, though. I think this year is gonna be a big breakout year where the you know, I'm blessed with everything that I have, but the home run, something always thwart it, bro. So I'm like, everything is, remember, it's top secret, you know. I have the emails and we have to have a code. I have to sign an agreement that I won't tell anybody about it. So everything is classified. Top secret. So now the people will get ready to release the song and people start leak out music. And them leak the song and the song got #1 in New York, #1 in Hartford, #1 in Albany, #1 in Boston the same week. Them leak it. So Danny C called the label and I say, yo, the song out, and so them I try to find who leaked the song. So it's like she just get mad and she just got up one night and she just scrapped every song that she recorded for the album. All the songs, the engineer that I was in the studio with in New York, he said he mixed 200 songs. And they picked the song. And she got up one night, no promotions, no nothing, and she just released that song, an album with only new music, 12 a.m. 12 midnight.
The Lemonade Project there.
Yep.
So originally, you should have been either on that project or the project that would have been before that project.
All new music, nothing that anybody heard. And because they leaked Standing on the Sun. Yep. So there was no more. Beyonce did a song with a Jamaican artist that done gone. That it's like you're buying stocks and you buy the rumor and sell the news.
Welcome to the life as an artist, because as you said, it's always those amazing highs and those devastating lows.
So just for the complimentary, she actually put the song on her platinum album. She released a platinum album, I think the next year. Mm-hmm. So the song is actually on her platinum edition album. So, you know, but at the end it's good for the resume, but what they really wanted to do, like shoot videos and all that stuff, bro. And that time she was, you know, it's not like now where I think she's recording a lot more songs now and she's more accessible now. Yeah. It's one of them days still. We live and we still dream of.
You know what's even crazier is that's the one that we know. Imagine how many stuff we don't know that was almost happened that did not happen.
100%, bro. 100%. And sometimes you do songs and you can't get clearance. Like I just did something with Stefflon Don and one of the biggest Latino artists, and I just couldn't get clearance. Yep, for Te Amo. And we had to scrap the project after waiting for almost 2 years. But it's a business, bro.
And you take it in stride and you understand that.
Learning every day.
Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you one last question, but I need you to promise me something. That we're going to do another part of this interview, because there's still crazy questions to ask, but this is 3 hours now, bro. So we could do a second part to this, right?
Right.
Good to go. All right, let me pick from this. Super random. Jovi Rockwell. All right. How did you meet Jovi Rockwell?
I met Jovi Rockwell at Philly Name Studio. I think it's Philly Name Yogi Studio. Yogi. Mm-hmm. She actually co-wrote Do You Know? Yeah. She actually, when she was writing it, she was writing like, trying to sound like Vegas. Come a long way, what a sweet love story. Remember the days? because she's a great writer.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard her on the same beat, I liked her sound. She reminded me of Nelly Furtado. So I found a record, an old school record called "You're Gonna Need Me."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, called "You're Gonna Need Me." So I was like, yo, I need to do something with Jovi like Sean Paul and Sasha. Yeah. So I got the record to her. I said, I needed to do this record, you know. And you know, it took a minute, but I was persistent. It's like, you have to do this record. And then she finally said, you know, she's gonna do it. So she did the record and I took it to Bobby Digital. Bobby Digital mixed the record and I released the record and the record started doing really well. So because of that record, someone took her to Sony Records. And someone reached out to me and said, oh, we were just in a meeting and they played a song with you and Jovi Rockwell. And I said, I produced that record. Yeah, what's going on? I said, you know, she's going to get signed. And I was like, for real? So I'm thinking that, okay, if she's going to get signed, she's going to promote this record as her first single. Because this is the record that they took her in the meeting with. Yeah. So that was not the case. And she ended up signing a major deal. But I think the direction where they took her in, it didn't work out. So after she got dropped from the deal, because I think people have to understand that when a record label hears you, and they hear you with something authentic, or you know, as a sound, you have to basically continue or give them like what Sean Paul did. Yeah. So when they dropped her Major Lazer, when they just were starting out, they just were starting out, they sent me a beat, and I said to the brother from Major Lazer, Diplo, I said, yo, I have a girl named Jovi Rockwell, you know, I want to put her on the record. Yeah, and he said, all right. So I recorded the song and I wrote Jovi Rockwell's part and sent it to her. And of course, she had some things to it. And the record actually is on Major Lazer's first album, Can't Stop Now, with me and Jovi Rockwell. The problem is they didn't get to release it because the record was doing very well. It was one of the top records on the first album. But the problem is contractual agreements and all them things that basically mess up the whole thing. Because again, I became the problem because I wanted to use a lawyer to sort out my contract. Because I knew Diplo, I knew Major Lazer was going to be big. And I'm like, if I'm going to be a part of this thing, I want my, you know, proper, you know, credits. I want to be, you know, represented by an attorney. And it didn't work out. So the song, you know, they didn't push it as a single or push it as a, you know, it was just on the album. And the relationship got strained based on that. And of course, I did come out and burn a fire upon them. As usual, you know, say, me I go burn a fire from, me say the thing now go right. Because why I burn out Major Lazer them in the early stage, and I think Diplo is still, maybe he has gotten over it because he get real big now and he turned into a mega star. But the reason why I did burn them out is because I did think, say, you know what? I don't want people to think them can just come into dancehall and take it as nobodies. And just put up on a project and win on a proper representation. The same thing why I called out Drake and I got a lot of backlash and they say artists are bad, say people not give them no ratings internationally. I'm like, these are the reasons, because when people come into the space or come into the sphere, we let people take advantage of us. You understand? We don't let people give us proper credits, and they give outsiders other credits where they don't give us. So I get in trouble all the time because I'm very open about these things.
It's the bad guy. The bad guy is here. And I mean, everybody likes the bad guy. Mr. Vegas, this part one of this conversation has been so epic. And again, thank you for even sitting down, because again, I caught the live. I was tagged. I caught the live. I heard you going off. I said, whatever. And I seen the comments. Yes, people are agreeing. And I said, okay, cool, whatever. But what the only thing, I turned to somebody called me and said, yo, they're bunning you out. I said, yo, the only problem I had with Vegas is I wish he had called my name. I wish he had said it. You hear me? I got 500 new subs because of that. I said, I wish he had said my name. Anything else, I have zero problems with. That's the only problem I had.
I think that is based on the intelligence that I've seen you put on display. Mm-hmm. It's rare. We do interviews with people and especially in these days where everyone has a phone or a site or a vlog, where people they, it's difficult, I guess, on some people's part to bring out what the artists really want to say. So sometimes the interviews that you watch is based on the questions and speaking over each other and stuff like that. So I respect the fact that we were able to have a nice discourse and understanding each other and listening to each other.
For sure, 1000%. Before we get out of here, leave us with a crazy Mr. Vegas medley before we go.
I started it when I want to see you on in the air, but I never get that slam yet, fee and I care. Holiday and them in the air, yeah, me there. Na 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 na. Kill me no. Na 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 na. Kill me the head Zion. Kill me the hands up, girl, from your nose and you never. But nobody never yet say I know how. But one thing in a life where you're sure about, and when you're sure about, go and go tell them say you're not sucky duck if you hear no name burn. But I do them, I am blessed. I am blessed. Every day of my life I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning and I lay my head to rest, every day of my life I'm a gallus.
Vegas, thank you so very much for this conversation. I actually can't wait to sit down and do the second part of this conversation, because again, we still didn't get into your stage shows, your albums, your high points, low points. There's still so much to go. But I think this is the icebreaker where everybody can watch this, understand, and you'll be ready for the second part.
Give thanks, brother.
Mr. Vegas, let me give you an outro and get you out of here, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Muscle, and this has been another Two Line Music Hut's Entertainment Report podcast, and we are out.
Give thanks.
This podcast is brought to you by www.twolinedmusichut.com.